Hello? Hello? Hello?
It's kind of
Yeah. That's
he
him.
reminds.
Good to know.
Time to rock and roll.
I think we're going to be rocking and rolling tonight too.
A very nice conversation today with Jane Van.
Really great.
To call this evening's meeting of the Peoria City Council to order. Welcome H. Wayne Wilson and his listening audience at WCBU as well as Cable Channel 22.
Good job.
Madam Clerk, the council microphones are open for roll call.
Mayor Ardis,
Here.
Councilmember Akeson,
Here.
Councilmember Sear, Councilmember Grab, Councilmember Montalongo,
Here.
Councilmember Moore, Councilmember Euler,
Here.
Councilmember Riggenbach,
Here.
Councilmember Ruckriegel, and Councilmember Turner.
Present.
You have a quorum present, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Notice was received by a member of the City Council in accordance with rules established in Ordinance Number 16142, and the member will be deemed authorized to attend the meeting electronically unless a motion objecting to the member's electronic attendance is made, seconded, and approved by 2/3 of the members of the City Council physically present at the meeting. If no such motion is made and seconded, then the request by the member to attend electronically shall be deemed approved by the City Council and the presiding officer, and shall declare the requesting member present. And Councilwoman Jensen has requested permission to attend electronically as she's out of town on business, and I'm seeing no objections. So Councilmember Jensen will be considered present. At this time, I would like to ask everyone to join us in standing for a moment of silent prayer or silent reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I would also like everyone to please offer up an additional moment of silence for Carol Holford, who many of us have known for a long, long time. Carol has been the epitome of a neighborhood activist, someone who's concerned about not just her neighborhood, which is Glen Avenue, but Gale Avenue, but also the entire city. Carol worked tirelessly. She was known affectionately to many of us as the Rat Lady because of her efforts to keep rats under control during construction, specifically on I-74, but in other places as well. So Carol's unexpected passing caught everyone by surprise. I can say on behalf of the whole City Council that Carol, her laugh, her friendship, her extreme love for this city that can't be matched by anyone will be sorely missed. And we just want again to keep Carol and all of her family in our prayers.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right.
We do have one proclamation tonight for the winner of the Arthur Ashe Leadership and Sportsmanship Award to Malini Vijay Singha. And we'd like to invite Malini and coaches, both the Tyler coaches and anyone else, to join us here in the front. Sounds good. Whereas Malini Vijay Singha was awarded the Intercollegiate Tennis Association Arthur Ashe Leadership and Sportsmanship Award in Queens, New York on August the 24th, 2018. This prestigious award is given to players who have exhibited outstanding sportsmanship and leadership in addition to excelling in scholastics and extracurricular achievement. And whereas among her many outstanding sports records, Malini combined for an overall 27-31 record during the 2017-18 season, including a 15-14 doubles record. She completed her junior year as sixth on the program's all-time singles victory list with a 55-44 record in her 3 seasons, and she continues to excel in the sport as a senior. And whereas Malini, who hails from Apple Valley, Minnesota, is attending Bradley University and majoring in biochemistry, philosophy, and Spanish. She will graduate in May and hopes to enroll in the Fulbright program to be an English teaching assistant. She later hopes to obtain her master's degree in public health. And whereas after participating in weekly litter pickups with assistant coach Steve Tyler, Malini decided to start a litter pickup team with her fellow Bradley students. She now leads other students in weekly litter collections around Peoria. Her leadership has resulted in engaging her classmates to make Peoria a better place. Now, therefore, I, Jim Ardis, Mayor of the City of Peoria, Illinois, do hereby recognize and celebrate Malini Vijay Singha as the winner of the Arthur Ashe Leadership and Sportsmanship Award in Peoria, Illinois. So I got to meet Malini a year or so ago up at Bradley on one of the Bradley cleanups, and I can't tell you how inspiring it was to go up to campus and have Malini leading this group of, I think that day we probably had at least 25 or 30 students that just worked around the whole area and picked up trash, and they continue to do that to this day. So again, outside of her scholastic achievements and her achievements on the tennis team, she really is a person who has given back to this community and really put a lot of leadership forward. Steve Tyler behind me, who is the assistant tennis coach, is our current litter czar, who leads these litter efforts throughout the community. And I know that Steve and his son Matt both would like to say a couple words about VJ's leadership in our community and at Bradley University, and then we'll see if we can coax Malini into saying a word too. Steve?
Thanks, Mayor Jim. I just wanted to say how special it has been for Matt and for me to be coaches of Malini. She's a most remarkable young lady. She's the only Division I tennis player this year to receive the Arthur Ashe Award, and she's most deserving. She's nearly a 4.0 student. She dedicates time to give free lessons, tennis lessons, to the latchkey kids at Whittier. She's been very involved with the Bradley. She's spearheaded the Bradley University cleanup events. She tutors and mentors outside of class and outside of Bradley. And it's the kind of community person we need and have enjoyed these 3.5 years here in Peoria. So, Malini, I just thank you for allowing Matt and for me to be a part of this whole award ceremony. So thank you. Thank you, Jim.
Hi. I didn't know that I would be speaking tonight, but I guess I just want to thank the mayor and everybody here for taking the time to have me and to recognize me. Being in Peoria for the past 3.5 years has been instrumental to my development, and I really feel like I've found a home here in the city and at Bradley, and I'm thankful for everybody that I've met and all that I've been able to be involved in while I've been here. So thanks for taking the time tonight.
Councilman Graham.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the minutes of the regular City Council meeting held on October 9, 2018, as well as the special City Council meeting minutes. That meeting was held on October 16, 2018, as printed.
The motion seconded by Councilmember Turner. Are there any corrections or changes to the minutes? Seeing none, please cast your ballots. Councilmember Jensen.
Aye, or yes.
That motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
We're at the township portion of the meeting. 18-303 is the Town of the City of Peoria Financial Report for period ending 9/30/2018 with a request to receive and file.
Okay. Trustee Graham.
I move to receive and file.
Motion to receive and file, seconded by Trustee Turner. Any discussion? Trustee Sear.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one question or comment for Mr. Abnauer. Just want to make sure I understand the numbers correctly. Annual budget, $2.6 million roughly. And you're asking for next year a tax levy of about $1.8 million, which is about 30% less. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, well, I just want to congratulate you in a time where it's very, very difficult. Money is very tight everywhere, and you've been on the job for a year or so. And I just want to congratulate you for being fiscally responsible and the great job you're doing over there. So congratulations, sir.
Okay. Any further questions? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your ballots. Trustee Jensen.
Yes.
And the motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
Item 18-304 is a communication from the Town Officials Budget Committee with a request to approve the proposed estimated tax levy of $1,831,893, which is an estimate tax rate of 0.12 for the Town of the City of Peoria.
Trustee Graham.
I move for approval.
Motion to approve, seconded Trustee Turner. Is there discussion on this item? Seeing none, please cast your ballots. Trustee Jensen.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
18-305 is a request to approve the monthly anticipated expenditures for November 2018 for the Town of the City of Peoria.
Trustee Grib.
Move for approval.
Motion to approve, seconded by Trustee Ruckriegel. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, please cast your ballots. Trustee Jensen?
Yes.
And that motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We're at the consent agenda. 18-306 is a request to approve a sole source contract with Midco Incorporated for the access control software replacement in the not-to-exceed amount of $36,846. 18-307 is a request for the city manager to execute an agreement with the Illinois Department of Transportation in an amount not to exceed $88,200 for the city's participation in resurfacing for the parking lanes and signal upgrades of Northeast Adams Street from Eureka Street to south of Woodlawn Avenue and on Northeast Jefferson Street from Abington Street to North Woodlawn Avenue. 18-308 is a request to approve the estimate of taxes to be levied in the amount of $27,766,500 at a rate of 1.34738. That is for the city of Peoria. 18-309 is a request to concur with a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to adopt an ordinance amending an existing special exception, ordinance number 11615, with a special use in a Class R1 single-family residential district for a building addition and freestanding sign for property located at 1700 West War Memorial Drive. 18-310 is a request to concur with a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to adopt an ordinance amending an existing special use ordinance 15862 as amended in a Class C2 large-scale commercial district for a shopping center to add a veterinary clinic for property located on Pear Tree and West Partridge Way. 18-311 is an appointment and reappointment by Mayor Artis to the Peoria Housing Authority with a request to concur of Helen King. 18-312 is an appointment by Mayor Artis to the Metropolitan Airport Authority Board with a request to concur of Carl Weiss. 18-313 is a report from the City Treasurer, Patrick Nichtine, for the month of September 2018 with a request to receive and file. And that completes your consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any items to remove from consent this evening? Seeing no lights, I have a motion to approve by Councilman Graves, seconded by Councilman Euler. If there's no further discussion, please cast your ballots. Councilmember Jensen?
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We're at the first readings. 18-314 is a request to concur with the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff for a first reading of an ordinance amending Appendix A, the Unified Development Code, relating to community gardens and urban farms.
Director Black?
Thank you, Mayor. This is an amendment to the existing zoning ordinance that would allow for slightly larger community gardens that we are referring to as urban farms, and then also reduces the size of the current allowance for a community garden. So at this point, community gardens can be up to 2 acres in size, and there are restrictions involved with that particular use. What this would do is it would allow an urban farm that is larger than 1 acre up to 10 acres. An urban farm is a special use in all districts, so it would have to go through the public hearing process and then come to the City Council for approval. Community gardens, which are 1 acre or smaller in size, would be allowed as a permitted use because they obviously have a much smaller footprint. Once you get above that 10 acres, then the city has agricultural zoning that would be far more appropriate for something that's of that particular size, 10 acres plus. What this would allow is for the natural expansion and reuse of vacant land that exists within the city, but it would also allow the surrounding property owners to provide their input, and then for the city council to make the final decision on the particular use.
Thank you. Questions for staff on first reading? Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Director, it doesn't have a page number here, but it's under 5.3 Use and Performance Standards. Under G, it's number 5 or 5. It used to be E slashed out, and it's 5. And it's regarding fences. That's the section I'm going to. And the last sentence on that paragraph indicates if the community garden use is abandoned, the fence must be removed. And so my question is, who would monitor that? Who would be responsible for its removal? Is there some key person who is the go-to person who would then be legally responsible or financially responsible for removing the fence? And do we keep up with that information?
Sure. So if a farm, if an urban garden or an urban farm is a community garden or urban farm is abandoned, then we would first contact the property owner and tell them they need to remove the fence. If they do not remove the fence, then we would follow the same process that we do with any property maintenance violation and do an abate notice and eventually issue a work order, have a contractor remove the fence, and then send the bill to the property owner.
So there are a lot of property owners who have vacant land who are, out of the goodness of their heart, they're allowing it to be used in this way. And I'm trying to make sure that they are protected if a group comes in and convinces that property owner to let them put a community garden there, and then they don't take care of it, then that owner is on the hook. So is there anything that we convey to the owner of the property that perhaps they should get something in writing from these folks to make sure that he or she is not left holding the fence, if it will, at the end? Or is that even our responsibility?
I don't know that it's the responsibility of the city. I think it would be wise for any private property owner to have some type of agreement if they allow someone else to come onto their property to do any type of activity.
That owner also should be advised about liability exposures resulting from people coming onto their property, because that property owner would be liable, I would imagine. But that's also not our responsibility to determine liability. But would you advise a property owner to at least do their word?
Sorry, perhaps what we could do is we'd be happy to work with the legal department to come up with maybe a list of best practices so that if someone is interested in allowing an urban farm, community garden on their property, then these would be the suggested best practices. And we can bring that back to council.
Thank you. Any further questions for staff on the first reading? Seeing none, we have a motion to receive and file. Councilman Graham, seconded by Councilmember Turner. Seeing no further discussion, please cast your ballots. Councilmember Jensen?
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
18-315 is a request for a first reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 26, Section 26-250 of the Code of the City of Peoria, designating standards of construction for sidewalks.
Director Reese.
Thank you. What we're bringing forward tonight is an ordinance very similar to what we have for brick streets. I believe it was passed in the late 80s, where a number of streets were defined to remain brick, and any work that needed to be done in those had to be replaced back with brick, and if we were to change, we had to bring something forward to council and get their approval. So the code is actually silent on sidewalks as far as the type of material. that is supposed to go back in there. We're seeing a number of questions come up in various parts of town as far as what's the appropriate material to put back down when they pull up brick sidewalk. So staff, we went through it and looked at some things. There's a number of locally historic districts in the city, and those are defined on the map, and then there's an attachment with all those called out as far as where those local historic districts are. And at this time, our recommendation is to just require brick sidewalks in those local historic districts and not in the national historic districts, as those are covered under a different process.
Okay. Questions for Director Reese on first reading? Councilman Gribb.
Director Reese, you did mention stamped concrete. I believe that's colorized to look like actual red brick material. Am I right or wrong?
I mentioned it right now or in the past? I'm sorry.
You mentioned it in this memo here.
It's a possibility as an alternative. If we don't want to require brick, it's probably a cheaper alternative. I don't think it was staff's recommended approach just because of maintenance of it. Our recommendation is either to go with regular concrete or brick.
Do we have that downtown already, stamped
so we
concrete that's colorized?
Fulton Plaza is stamped asphalt. It's not stamped concrete. The places in town that I know of that are stamped concrete is the crosswalk up by Bradley. It just causes some maintenance issues more so than traditional brick or regular concrete.
Mm-hmm. Well, stamped asphalt can look very nice, but it has to be maintained. When it loses its red color, it has to be recolorized through the years. What do we have downtown along Water Street with those crosswalks? What would that be?
Those are all that I'm thinking of right now. I believe those are all brick crosswalk laid in the street.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. This is a first reading. And do we need a motion to approve?
Receive and file.
Receive and file.
Motion to receive and file is seconded by Councilmember Sear. Any further questions or discussion on this item? Seeing none, please cast your ballots. Councilmember Jensen?
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
We're at regular business. 18-316 is a communication from the city manager and the interim chief of police with a request to approve the following. A is an ordinance amending the City of Peoria 2018-19 biennial budget relating to the general fund to recognize the receipt of federal and state asset seizure funds and the corresponding expenditures to purchase 8 unmarked vehicles in the amount of $167,800. And B is to purchase the 8 unmarked vehicles for the Peoria Police Department Special Investigation Division in that same amount. And if we could have separate motions and votes, thank you.
Assistant Chief Mashinsky, did you want to outline this for us?
It's been a little while since this is, of course, the undercover fleet. So it's been, I believe, since 2011 since we purchased. Bob Williams and his crew have done a great job of keeping these cars going for us. We unfortunately kind of reached the point now, though, where Bob's done all he can do, and so it's before he'd asked to purchase these. Now, of course, this comes out of the 2 asset forfeiture funds, the state and federal funds, which are only allowed to use this money for training or equipment related to drug enforcement. So this is, and you can't use it for personnel. So this can only be used for equipment related to drug enforcement. So these cars that the ones that we're trading in, they have between 145,000 miles and 225,000 miles. They are 10 to 15 years old. 2003 to 2008 are a lot of them. And we will definitely be purchasing from in the city of Peoria, from it may be a couple different dealerships to find what we want, but the dealerships will definitely be in the city of Peoria.
Any questions for the chief? Or motion? Councilmember Ruckriegel, motion to approve item A, seconded by Councilmember Euler. Is there discussion on this item? Seeing none, please cast your ballots. Councilmember Jensen?
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously. And on item B, Councilmember Moore, motion to approve, seconded by Councilmember Ruckriegel, or Riggenbach. The R's got me going. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, please cast your ballots. Councilmember Graham. Okay. Councilmember Jensen.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
18-301 is a communication from the council member Sid Ruckriegel with a request for the following. A is to approve a resolution excluding city council members from participation in IMRF. B is to approve a resolution excluding city council members from participation in a City of Peoria health plan. And C is to adopt an ordinance setting the compensation for certain elected officials of the City of Peoria. And if we could have separate motions and votes on each, I would appreciate
separate
it.
motions.
Thank you.
Councilmember Ruckriegel.
Thank you, Mayor. In front of us tonight are three pieces of consideration. And I will admit that they're probably not as easy as they should be for us to discuss, because they actually put the mirror back onto ourselves. And at a time when we are facing right now a $6 million+ deficit, and we've asked a lot of our employees, I think it's time that we also make sure that we also look at ourselves and what we have put into our compensation plan. Because at the end of the day, our job is to be able to provide the city services, and those frontline people, whether that be in public works, public safety, staff here at City Hall, those are the people that directly impact the services that we provide our citizens of Peoria. The first thing that we have is the participation in IMRF, and two pieces to really consider there is, first off, if we should be participating in a plan when many of our conversations actually here talk about that the pension problem may be one of the biggest burdens that we have facing us as a city. Should we be participants, or should we set the example that we would like to be able to make some moves within that plan? The second part is, do we actually qualify? We passed an ordinance for the 1,000 hours that we automatically get participation, but that really does not justify, in my mind, passing an ordinance, the 1,000 hours that are the minimum requirement for IMRF participation. Second is a resolution on the city health plan. We require our team members, our employees here at City Hall, to work an average of 30 hours per week. We do not have that on ourselves, and we participate. Again, is this something that we should be doing when, as we look at the third part of this, it is not even listed within the compensation of a city council employee? I would also like to remind that this really is a part-time public service position that we have gone for from election. And to be able to talk a little bit about that, if we look at what the compensation for a city council member is supposed to be, we see two things. One, an annual salary of $16,500 and an auto allowance that is now $400, which I'm recommending we take down to $100. There is no discussion of benefits, there is no discussion of health care, and there is no discussion of pension. They should not be included. And how they got included, I'm not for sure. But today we get to be able to write this decision and be able to make something for the citizens correct. Over the past couple of weeks, I've heard a lot of ayes. I work hard, I have no doubt. I deserve this. Again, That is not for myself to justify one way or the other. And I keep hearing a lot of ayes from people who think that these should be included. Those ayes come from around this council. But what I don't hear a lot about is the we. And it's not we, the council, it's we, the taxpayers of the city of Peoria, who have paid taxes to the city for us to provide services. And we have to be a leader in this conversation to make sure that we provide the maximum number of services that we can to our citizens. It's interesting that not long ago, we're talking about a possible $10,000 reduction for anybody who makes over $100,000 who works for the city as a possibility. We've been talking about fines, fees, increases of lines of payment on property taxes for certain areas. And we've asked our staff to take layoffs and furloughs, including our interim chief of police, who is this week on a furlough, which means he cannot answer a text, answer a phone call, or answer an email by the rules of our furlough. Yet we are going to look around possibly tonight, and we get to make the decision. Should we not partake in any of those cuts, as we have asked all of the other departments to do, or will we fully compensate ourselves beyond what is originally set out, which is an annual salary and possibly a vehicle fee? So I'm open to questions from the council, but I think that, again, tonight's vote is not about the quality of work. It's not about what we are able to do, but it is about, are we going to be a leader about what we say and set the right tone and do the right thing for our team and staff and our taxpayers? Or are we going to take a $16,500 job and turn it into, in some cases, a $40,000 job in a city where the average salary is $48,000 on a full-time position? And before somebody says, well, it's only $62,000, this is an open-ended check. So if all 10 members would take the highest maximum health benefit, that would be $156,000, plus the pension costs, plus the other costs. There are a lot of savings here, and I would also encourage everybody to look at, if we don't look at certain thresholds at this level, how can we be responsible for thresholds at a higher level? I appreciate any questions and look forward to a conversation tonight.
Okay. Motion to approve. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Sear. Discussion, Councilmember Akeson.
Thank you. I appreciate Councilman Ruckrigel's efforts to reduce our budget, and I look forward to other conversations where we can scrutinize city expenditures, because clearly I do not believe we do enough scrutiny. I do not believe we ask enough questions and get enough information in a timely basis. However, and even though I think perhaps I'm the only council person that doesn't take any benefits, and I haven't taken any benefits since I started, so this will not affect me one way or the other. But I do not think it's responsible for us to assume that people who are attracted to this job could afford to do the job without having the benefits or having a car allowance, because I will tell you, I drive around the city every afternoon. I have ever since I started, 3 hours every day. I do not claim my gas allowance. Even though I get a gas allowance, I do not itemize it. I do not think that it is reasonable to assume that everybody has the means, as you do, and as I do, and other members of this council have over the course of time, to assume that everyone is in the same situation. And I don't think it's fair to put a burden on other city council members. I cannot support this. And I think that if you or any of the other council members think that this is a reasonable, it's reasonable to only draw a salary, then they can do what I did and elect not to accept the benefits. So I cannot support this, and I really do think for the future of other councils coming forward, we have to assume that we want to attract people from all economic backgrounds.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to speak.
Councilwoman Jensen.
Thank you. I concur with Councilwoman Akeson. None of us run and serve on the council for the salary and benefits, but for some of us, the salary and optional benefits make it possible to serve. I think this proposal smacks of elitism. Running and serving as a council member should not be limited to only those that are wealthy and elite. I will not be supporting any of these ordinances for that reason. And I will end my comments there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion on this item? Councilmember Ruckriegel.
All right. Just as in final closing, and I did talk about a lot of the ayes that I've heard, so I'm going to end with my last aye. Because we're going to be going into a budget situation here where we're at least $6 million over budget. And we're benefits that were never, ever intended in Part C, which is our compensation package. It is $156,000 just on the health care possible liability if everybody would take it. And you know what? At a certain point, we've got to start leading by example and putting into place. And thank you very much. I appreciate you talk about that some can't afford maybe other things that some can't. This job, and I don't know anybody who does go into this job to make it a full-time salary. People serve because they care to. And I, for one, won't brown out, close out, sell out our public safety employees to give pensions and health care to so-called self-proclaimed public servant leaders. That's not why we serve. That's not why we should be serving. And at a certain point, it's very interesting to me that we may, after this vote, go into next year again making sure that our nests are feathered, but those of our employees are not. Sorry. And I will move to approve Part A, which is the resolution excluding city council members for participation in IMRF.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, please cast your ballots. Councilmember Jensen.
No.
That motion fails with 3 ayes and 8 noes voting yes. Councilmembers Sear, Regenbach, and Ruckriegel. On item B, Councilman Ruckriegel.
I'd make a motion for item B to approve a resolution excluding city council members for participation in the City of Peoria Health Plan.
Okay. We have a motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Sear. Discussion on this item. Councilman Ruckriegel.
Again, Mayor, I would remind that we have a 30-hour-a-week minimum requirement that we ask the rest of our city employees to be able to use as their threshold. We ourselves are setting a different threshold for us, the 10 council members, which we are running for an elected office.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, please cast your ballots. Councilmember Jensen.
No.
That motion fails with 4 ayes and 7 noes voting yes. Councilmembers Sear, Euler, Regenbach, and Ruckriegel. On item C, Councilman Ruckriegel.
To adopt an ordinance setting the compensation of certain elected officials of the City of Peoria.
Okay. Seconded by Councilman Sear. I'd like to get a second on the floor. Okay, second. Councilman Sear.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Ruckriegel, would you consider amending your motion where right now I believe we're all getting $400 a month or $4,800 $100 a year for mileage. Would you be consider cutting this mileage by 50% and adding instead of adding mileage, but I don't believe it's good to have. I'm not even sure if it's legal for us to do that. Adding half of it would be $2,400 plus the $16,500, just to round the number up, just to have a salary of $19,000 a year and not having any mileage. Would you consider amending your motion to something like that?
So let me just make sure that I'm following here. So right now we receive an annual salary of $16,500 and $400 auto allowance, which is $4,800 a year. Your suggestion is to eliminate the auto allowance and in that $4,800, cutting that. So right now we have a total compensation of $16,500 and $48,000 to take that actually down as a combined number to $19,000 and put it into just the annual salary. That at first glance actually would seem to be more transparent to the taxpayer to be able to understand what the true compensation is intended to be for the city council. Is that what I'm hearing? So $19,000 total?
Yes, sir.
And just for the audience, that would be a savings of how much per year with the 10 council members? Or I'm sorry, with the 5 council members?
Well, it'll be $2,300 saving per year times 11 of us. So we're looking at 26,000, something like that.
So and this would actually only affect the at-larges, so half of that. Reluctantly, I would agree to that change.
Okay. Madam Clerk, do you have that? So it's going to adjust it to the salary would be $19,000 total.
Right.
Okay. Discussion on the revision. Councilwoman Akeson.
Okay, now I'm really befuddled. If we raise our salary, then doesn't that impact the IMRF or the potential future cost of retirement, the retirement benefit? So I think keeping the salary at $16,500 and having the auto allowance at $400 is more reasonable. If we are really seriously concerned about the future cost of the pension obligations, and maybe there's somebody here that could clear that up. I mean, we're kind of, again, writing policy on the fly on the floor without really knowing what the cost is. Anybody here know the answer to that?
Manager?
If you were to raise the salary at our current IMRF rates, if you were to raise the salary for the 5 individuals, it would be $262 of increased employer contributions into the pension system on an annualized basis. So for the 5, you're looking at $1,300 total. That's the increased employer portion. To Councilwoman Akeson's point, though, I mean, it would increase what would be considered a pensionable wage.
Right. So this is defeating the purpose. I am really at a loss as to what's going on here.
Okay.
And again, if we're that concerned about how much money we are taking from the city treasury to be compensated for this job, then we all could just turn it right back in. We could donate it, as Councilman Weaver did. We can elect to take some of it or not all of it. I do not really understand what's going on here. I don't think there's a significant savings, and I think this is a very bad precedent.
I have Councilman Sear and then Councilman Recreal.
Mr. Manager, what are the limits or amount of time that somebody has to serve to qualify for the pension?
Well, it depends if you're a Tier 1 employee I think it's 8 years to vest if you're a Tier 1 employee, and if you're in Tier 2 in the pension system, it's 10 years to invest to be vested in the pension system. So a council member would have to serve, a new council member would have to serve 2.5 terms in order to be vested in the pension system.
So 10 years minimum.
And that rate is determined by your highest 4 years of salary earned. So continuous salary earned for 4 years.
Well, I guess we could amend. I could make a proposal to amend the motion, and just for the sake of saving a little bit of money on the pension, we could do the $200 rate for mileage instead of $400 presently is the case.
Councilman Rodrigo.
I think Councilwoman Akeson brings up a very good point about the pension. And in reconsideration, I think that the solution that Councilman Sear, while still which does not move the needle on our compensation much, is at least a step forward into 16.5 as it has been, and reducing the auto allowance from 400 to 200. I do take umbrage with getting financial advice from certain council members about where we should and shouldn't give our money. I think we all do a lot of community service, but I do very interesting that we would be giving financial advice on where to give money to on the council floor. However, I do again think that every single dollar that the city spends should be scrutinized. And when we don't look at the qualifications that set certain thresholds for ourselves, I wonder in the future how we look at thresholds that we're going to be holding accountable for the rest of our staff and employees. Again, the staff that we will be furloughing and laying off have to work an average of 30 hours a week, but we're going to provide health care. We're going to provide pension. This is a step in the move in the right direction, reducing auto allowance from 400 to 200, so I will support that amendment by Councilman Sear.
Maybe one of you could state the actual motion, because we moved it a couple times here.
The motion is to maintain the annual salary of $16,500 and reduce the auto allowance from $400 a month to $200 a month for the at-large city council members starting in May.
Okay. And that's seconded by Councilmember Sear. Okay, is everybody clear on the motion? I'm seeing no further lights. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Jensen?
No.
That motion fails with 3 ayes and 8 noes. Voting aye, Councilmember Sear, Riggenbach, and Ruckriegel. Mr. Corporation Counsel, we do have to pass some type of resolution here on the compensation for the next incoming.
Yes, Your Honor, you do, and it has to be 180 days before the next term starts. So I would suggest that it be set, if not now, in the very near future.
Okay. Councilman Gribb?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we keep the current at-large total compensation package the same with no increase.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilwoman Akeson. Discussion on this item. Seeing none, please cast your ballots. Councilmember Jensen.
Aye, or yes.
That motion passes with 9 ayes and 2 noes. Voting no, Councilmembers Sear and Ruckriegel. Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk.
18-317 is a request to approve a voluntary separation incentive for full-time commissioned employees who are covered by a collective bargaining agreement with the IAFF or PBPA.
Councilmember Moore, motion to approve. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilman Riggenbach. Councilman Moore.
Actually, I had a question. Is this a first reading?
Okay, pull that back.
My question is this a first reading for this item?
This is actual motion, action item.
Collective bargaining, yes, move to approve.
Okay. We have a motion to approve and a second by Councilman Riggenbach. Mr. City Manager.
We're just going to answer Councilwoman Moore's questions. We're good.
Okay. This is an action item, correct. Discussion. Councilman Grabe.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. We and other governmental organizations have done this before. I know the teachers throughout the state have done this for early departures. Some of the folks that are at the top of the salary scale depart, sometimes with a lot of institutional knowledge and wisdom. And then we have the people who need to be trained and brought up to speed, in some cases coming in and learning, having a learning curve. From what I'm hearing from many of our employees, this seems to be well received. And this allows us not to lay off people who do want to stay within the organization and serve the great people of the city of Peoria. Are you anticipating that we'll have a pretty good turnout on this?
As I said last year when we offered this for everyone that was not part of the police or fire unions, this is a very personal decision. Obviously, it comes into where someone is in their career, the number of years of service. Are they at a point where they can retire? And so we think there's probably 50 people that are eligible right now in both unions that would be able to avail themselves of this benefit. If we're lucky enough to get 15, I would be very happy. I think that's where I said that I hoped we would be last year. We got 16 people to take the VSI last year, so I'm hopeful that we'll see that the numbers are going to be comparable to that. If they are, that certainly will help in terms of the budget situation.
Is there a maximum number on this?
No, there is no limit, and that is one thing that we would certainly take into consideration. If we saw a surge, we would talk with the individuals about when we would set their departure date, because we can do that as part of this package. So, and we did that last year as well. We did have a couple of employees that took the VSI that we waited until mid-year for them to take it and retire.
Now, unlike some people around this horseshoe, I am not going to support any more reductions in staff. And you and I have had this conversation numerous times going back many, many months. Nor did this council member at any point in time do anything other than inveigh against the perils of having these furloughs. To me, it's insane that you can't reach a top-ranking director in our city, and he can't even check, or she can't even check her email because of a furlough. We need to fully fund the city and meet the needs of the people of our city. So I'm hopeful that this will not result in a lot of people leaving without their positions being filled, because these are the people who do the hard work. So I will support this, but I'm going to be watching very carefully the final budget manager, and we've had this conversation several times, so that we bring forward to see if it meets the needs, certainly of my district as well as the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sear next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, what is our deadline for to be done with our budget this year?
Well, we have to have the budget done in early December. So at the latest, early December. It's just simply in order to, it's a calendar year, fiscal year, you can't go into January without having a budget in place. So you have
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the date. What's the date?
I would say effectively you have to have a budget in place by early December. You can't, you're going to get into the holidays, it's going to drag on too long. You're going to need to meet, I think, as we've talked about and laid out in the budget calendar, that we would have the budget hearing next week, which is the 30th of October. We would have a special meeting on November 5th to talk just budget. We would have November 13th and then we would have November 20th. So that basically schedules us up through most of November on meeting every week to try and work towards coming to some resolution on the budget. But you can't go into the next year without having a budget in place.
Would that be fair to change the date from December 31st to maybe December 15th, so we have a chance to really look at the budget, make sure, since we're seems to me like we're missing, once in a while we're missing some of our numbers.
So the window that we have for this, if council approves it, it opens up tomorrow, and the employees would have a window of time. They would have to notify us by December 10th. So that gives us a period of time of understanding how many people have signed up and would be availing themselves of this benefit. So some of it might be fluid. If you adopt a budget in November 20th, and then it takes 2 weeks for the numbers to come in, but we'll be able to know by December 10th. We wanted to have it with a date that was early enough that we would know what that would look like before the end of the year.
Thank you.
Councilmember Euler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last time we had a discussion like this, we only applied it to management, and this time it was not throughout the entire collective bargaining unit, right?
To clarify, what we did last year was we offered it to everyone but these two bargaining units.
Correct. Yeah, sorry, that's what I was getting at. And we have absolutely no choice, in my opinion, but reductions in staff, and this is the responsible way to do it. If we have to go out and manually do this by taking cuts ourselves without voluntary reduction, it's going to come from the newest, lowest paid employees that we have. This allows the opportunity to reduce the cost at the top from employees that have longevity so that we can keep our new hires who hopefully have a very long career here with our city and continue to learn and grow in our community, and allow those that have served us for many years to take retirement. And it, in some cases, can be nearly a 2-to-1 difference here with the most senior employees taking retirement versus having to cut one of our newest people. So this is the responsible thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Grabe.
Well, I'm not recommending it, but in past years we've gone almost up to Christmas time before we've finalized the budget. We've even gone on recess, tail end of December, and decided that we wanted to revisit an item. A number of years ago, we decided to fully fund a COPS grant, which our congressman went to bat, the city of Peoria, to get. We needed a supermajority to do it, and we did it. So with some of the draconian cuts that are going to be called for here, and I don't use that word, I'll use the word drastic for people who don't know what draconian means, but I think we've used it enough time around this horse show to know that it means Hindenburg model for funding our city. We need to make certain the people in our neighborhoods and in our city understand the full magnitude of what this is going to mean. So if it takes a little bit longer, if we have to go almost to January 1, I think is the drop dead date, so be it. But I'm not encouraging that. I think we should be about the business of getting this settled. But I do also think the public needs to understand the ramifications of some of these huge retrenchments that are going to be proposed. And Manager, when I asked you if it was going to mean jobs last time, I really appreciated your candid answer. You almost jumped out of your seat and said, yes, indeed. So, you know, we're going to need to make certain that our constituents understand what the ramifications will be for our votes on this budget. Because this is the really, really big stuff. It's reminiscent of what we had to do, not quite as bad, following the Great Recession of 2008. And I know you guys don't like me to say it, but I'm going to keep saying it. When you start cutting all this money out, you're going to impact our neighborhoods. We're just starting to rebuild District 2. People are just beginning to see their property values coming back. So think long and hard about what you're doing. And those of you here who believe that there's a lot of fat in this budget, as I challenged you last time, bring it forward. Show it to us in writing, because I'd love to cut some fat out of this budget. Manager, if you've got fat in there, we want to find it and we want to cut it out. So those of you who have the idea that it's still got a lot of fat, it's time to speak up. And I wouldn't wait until Christmas or until New Year's Eve to do it. Thank you, Manager.
Thank you. I'm seeing no further lights.
Mr. Mayor, I've got a question.
Councilwoman Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Urick, and I'm not sure, you may have answered this and I may have missed it over the phone, but I know you said you think, or you'd be happy with 15 employees taking the offer. If that's the case, do you have an estimated cost of what that would be if 15 employees took it?
Well, it's going to obviously depend on their years of service and the salary that they're making, but it would be, I would say, from a salary perspective, we would be estimating it to be at about $100,000 per salary. That's probably on the conservative side. So we would be looking at, if 15 took it, $1.5 million of salary savings.
Can you repeat that? I didn't hear you. Sorry.
Looking at that estimate, it would be about $100,000 roughly per person that would be availing themselves of this benefit. So at that level, we would be looking, if 15 people took it, at about $1.5 million.
And then that would have to be part of our budget.
What
for those costs.
Correct. The cost that we would incur this year for that would be paying out the benefit time to the employees that retired. But the future cost is reduced as those employees have now left the employment of the city. And as Councilman Euler said, it would allow then the younger employees to stay on. Your collective bargaining agreements are structured in such a way that the most recent hires are the first people that are laid off in any layoffs. So they're usually at the lowest salary that you have. That's the reason why we would be looking at the voluntary separation in order to try and generate fewer layoffs by offering more people the opportunity to retire voluntarily.
As a follow-up, I think I recall from last week's discussion when we were going through the budget numbers, the last incentive that we did last year ended up costing more than you had anticipated or we had anticipated. Is that accurate?
No, I think that we saw higher benefit payouts because we just simply had more people retire last year. We did see a large number of people that left the organization that had some pretty high accrued benefit time on the books. So that's why we incurred a little bit more in that regard. I think that our VSI estimates were pretty accurate in terms of where we thought we were going to see. We had 16 people that took the voluntary separation initiative. I think that we filled 12 of those positions back, so there were 4 positions that were part of the position reductions that were made overall. Mm-hmm. So from that, and right now, as we look at where we are today, we're down about 20 positions from where we were a year ago. And I think that that's part of, between the VSI, the mid-year budget adjustments that we made, and then the vacant positions that we know that we currently have on board that we're not anticipating filling as we go into next year's budget.
And then my other question then is what's the plan for paying for that $1.5 million? I know that's going to be later in our discussions, but we will have to bond out for that.
No. So the payment the payment of accrued benefit time gets paid out as somebody retires. That cost then, as going forward, the $1.5 million that wouldn't be paid in salaries is a reduction that we would see in terms of what the budget would look like going forward. So If we saw 15 people take it at $1.5 million, that $1.5 million is not being spent next year.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions or discussion on this item? We do have a motion and a second. I'm seeing no lights. Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Jensen?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
18-318 is a communication from City Council member Beth Akeson with a request for a first reading review of an ordinance amending ordinance number 16142, providing for council rules and pertaining to the conflict of interest.
Councilwoman Akeson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So for several meetings, we've heard from the public that it appeared as if our city council did not have a conflict of interest rule. And I was pretty sure that that was not the case, but I didn't want to say anything during that time. But we do have a council rule. It's council rule number 13. However, it doesn't do, there's no language to describe what a definition of a conflict is. So I contacted the city manager asking if we could just use Black's Law Dictionary definition, which is short and sweet. And after the Corporation Council reviewed it, he took exception to two of the words in the definition, one of which was seeming and the other was incompatibility. And so he offered a substitute, which is what the council is going to be asked to approve, which is really just, we're already governed by that because it's a state statute, and it would seem to me that for most of us, pouring through the legalese in state statutes is not as clear as just saying, a short statement, a real or seeming incompatibility between one's private interests and one's public or fiduciary duties. So the way that this ordinance came forward, this is a first reading. Am I correct about that, Madam Clerk? Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. So I would hope that we might change this to not be full of so much legalese and make it short and sweet, which is the intention of all the rules of the council, to make it perfectly clear to all of us. Anyway, so that is my intent, Mr. Mayor, to just add more clarity.
Okay. Corporation Counsel, did you have?
Yes, Your Honor. As Councilmember Akeson had just advised, I did have some concern about utilizing Black's Law Dictionary as the definition of a conflict of interest, essentially because while Black's Dictionary is certainly authoritative, it is, by its nature, a dictionary, and as such does not have complete applicability to all areas of the law or peculiar or specific areas of the law. So the case law has developed pursuant to the Prohibited Activities Act as well as the Municipal Code, and the case law has been interpreted to have a long recitation of cases and of theories about what constitutes an impermissible conflict of interest. My concern with the language that was inserted is that, or suggested by Councilman Akeson, is that twofold. Firstfold, it says a real or seeming incompatibility between one's private interests and one's public or fiduciary duties. My concern is I'm not sure what seeming incompatibility incompatibility means, seeming to who or whom. That's my first concern. It doesn't identify who it seems incompatible to. The second concern that I had was that it used, that Black's dictionary uses the word incompatible, which has a specialized meaning in the law relative to incompatibility of offices, which is a related but distinct area of law from the conflicts issue. Incompatibility is typically referred to when you're looking at two offices and whether one person can simultaneously hold two offices at once. And then the inquiry there is whether those offices are incompatible. So that was my concern with that language. But certainly this is a first reading, and the council can consider other language should it desire. I will say, though, however, we need to be careful when we exercise our home rule authority, when we try to restrict in what way council members can vote or when they will be allowed to vote. In that, the law, Illinois law, has set forth that law. And should you restrict that further, there's a real question of whether that council member who would be barred from said council rule, essentially the effect of that would be to disenfranchise the sacred right of representation of a district or the constituency of that council member. So we need to tread carefully on that fundamental right.
I guess we'll vote on this in 2 weeks.
Mr. Mayor, could I comment?
When the floor is open, it'll be yours, Councilmember Jensen.
So I really would like to see something different come forward than this. I think that we can use other units of government as a guide, perhaps. When this came up, I knew that we had a rule, and there was no time for me to do the research necessary. I know that there were other units of government offered up as examples, and perhaps we could, what I would like to do, I guess, at this point, is give direction to our legal staff to come back with something more descriptive than what we have here that would pertain to our council decisions. Because I know, for instance, when council members own property, and we've voted in the past on an item that would affect their property, council members have recused themselves. And I know that there have been council members whose spouses work at a business, and we've been voting on something that affects the business. The council members have recused themselves. I can cite a couple of examples of that. I think the precedent has been that when council members feel they have a conflict, they voice that and they defer from voting. So I don't know why we're making this so complicated, but I'm not an attorney, and so I'll have to yield to our corporation counsel's advice, but I am not in favor of the way this has come back. So, Madam Clerk, I don't know what the proper procedure is, since I've requested this to be placed on the agenda, and I'm not thrilled with how it came to be. What is my next step?
You know, typically in any first reading, that's why we do it, the first reading, so we can provide feedback to staff. Okay. So I would say yours, along with any other feedback that we get this evening on this item, will be taken into consideration. And if we need more than one version for consideration, we've done that before too.
Okay, so I just move to...
Tonight's just going to be a receive and file.
Right, so I just move to receive and file.
Seconded by Councilmember Turner. I know we have more discussion. Were you finished, Councilman?
I'm completely finished. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councilwoman Akeson that I'm not a fan of this proposed language. I think we should clarify this further. And if Corporation Counsel, has concerns about Councilwoman Akeson's proposal from Black Law Dictionary, I would ask Corporation Counsel to look into what other municipalities and public bodies use for their conflict of interest ordinances and provisions, and see if maybe we could find some language similar or use what those bodies use that I think would be different than what's proposed here. So for what it's worth, that's my direction to the staff.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have Councilmember Ruckriegel next.
Thank you. Just, I guess, a question for Corporation Counsel. All of us around this council have filled out a conflict of economic interest statement. I believe it's a yellow sheet. As we have to put that into place every time that we try to go on the ballot to seek for re-election. Can you talk, and that really kind of defines, I think, some very strong parameters about what is considered a conflict or what may, and it talks about interests that we may actually have in certain things that may come in front of the council. How does that play into this? And I guess, why doesn't that fill in the gap here? Because that actually is a piece of paper that each one of us is filing that's on record.
That is made pursuant to Illinois Governmental Ethics Act, and it's required of anyone who serves in Illinois that is filed with the county clerk, and the county clerk maintains those. There are numerous statutes in the state of Illinois that apply. In this case, it's not sufficient to say that the Ethics Act is the only body of law that applies to city council members. As I indicated, that the municipal code applies, as well as the Prohibited Activities Act, as well as the common law of the state of Illinois. So there's not just one source. It emanates really from multi-sources. It is incumbent upon each council member to assess whether he or she believes that they have an impermissible conflict. And I have often counseled council members to go and seek the service of a private attorney who can represent their interest. And as you know, I believe, Councilman Rodrigo, I have prepared some time ago a memorandum that was addressed to council that gave an overview of the law relative to conflicts of interest. And so it's not fair to say that it's just one source. It's sort of a layered sources, and each council member must make a determination in his or her view that they do have a conflict or don't. But certainly the document that's filed with the county clerk, it would be instructive.
Okay. Is there any further questions or discussion on this item? First reading. Seeing none, we have a motion to receive and file. Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Jensen?
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
18-254 is a communication from City Manager and Director of Public Works with a request to adopt a resolution for a neighborhood traffic calming policy for the City of Peoria.
Director Reese.
Thank you. We brought this forward about a month ago after it went through a process with the Transportation Commission, and they had a lot of input and molding in this, and they had a consensus for approval for us to bring it forward to the City Council. One clarification we put on there is it is a neighborhood traffic calming policy. It is specifically designed for neighborhood streets. Arterial streets we address through our design and utilizing the city's complete street policy. So this is specifically for neighborhoods.
Okay. Questions, discussion, motion. Councilmember Akison.
I will move to approve.
We have a motion to approve, seconded by Councilmember Riggenbach. Is there any discussion on this item?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Jensen?
Thank you. Well, first I have a question. Is this then a first reading? It is, right?
We had first reading several weeks ago.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Then my next question, I guess, is directed to Director Reese. And I don't know. I didn't notice this earlier when we reviewed this at the last meeting, but I'm wondering, and I have a concern that the notice that's being sent out to, I guess, neighbors and residents is so late in the process. I'm on page 4 where the steps are outlined for the policy process, and number 9 out of 10 is when the notice will be sent to all the properties within the petition area explaining the preferred solution. I would like to see that changed, and I don't know if that would require an amendment, since this is a policy, that the notices are sent out sooner and much earlier in the process to ensure that we get resident and neighborhood input, and that they're involved in the design and of the solution earlier in the process rather than at the end. I know that's how we've handled a number of road projects in the last several years, and they've been quite successful because we've had neighborhood input and involvement very early in the process. So I don't know if Director Reese, if you could respond to that.
Yeah, I mean, if that's council's desire for us to move it, we can do it. The policy was intended, and it's written to be neighborhood initiated, very similar to our special assessment process, in that a resident contacts the city, we give them a possible solutions, and then they go out and talk to their neighbors and collect signatures. But if council wishes us to insert ourselves in that petition process and notify everybody that a petition is en route, that's something we can definitely do.
Okay, I would like to see that earlier in the process. So if that requires a motion, I will so move.
It would require a motion. I think that clearly, as Director Reese indicated, this is a neighborhood-driven initiative, so these issues are going to come to us from the neighborhood.
Right.
So being as it's coming from the neighborhood, I'm not sure of giving them more time is actually there or not, but if there's a second for the motion, we can consider that. And I'm seeing no second for the motion, so that motion dies for lack of a second.
Okay.
Okay. There were a couple more lights and they went off. Is there any other discussion on this item? Councilman Graham.
Director Reese, could you tell us where the stress fractures or fault lines were within the commission as it relates to this document that's being brought forward? Were there some great debates that we need to know about?
I don't believe there was a whole lot of great debates. There's definitely some differences of opinions on the Transportation Commission. Specifically, there's probably a few members that are not on the complete streets realm of things, and the direction that we've been going with a lot of these things compared to, I would say, a majority of the Transportation Commission members that are on board with bike lanes and sidewalks and that sort of thing, and on-street parking.
Well, one item that comes up, and I know Councilor Jensen is very familiar with this item, is the importance of retention of parking spaces, on-street parking spaces in our older neighborhoods. Not too far from here, we have 400 household neighborhood called the Uplands, and I could name many others in densely populated 61606 area in District 2. And as much as possible, based on my reading of this, we are trying to retain that parking. And we also feel that parking may also be a hindrance to speeders parking on the street. A lot of people think, oh, you know, gosh, we're going to maybe remove parking from the street and make things safer. That may not be the case. However, there are some folks that think, well, kids can dart between the cars. So that had to be a debate that entered into discussion, I would suggest, or I would think.
It definitely. I mean, on-street parking or the loss of parking spaces is a concern, especially in the older parts of town, because a lot of times that's the only place the residents have to park is the spot out in front of their house or a couple houses down. All of the correction measures, or I should say the majority of the correction measures, we're able to go out and try to accommodate both things. We try to very similar to when we put speed humps in the Uplands, is we worked with the neighborhood to try to address the traffic calming, but then also minimize any take of parking spaces that were there.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I had Councilmember Moore next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Director, in recognition of our budget woes, is it your opinion that we would try lower cost options before moving to the higher cost options? What I've noticed on here, some things that are out there now that I see that are having an impact, the flashing sign when you're approaching and it tells you what your speed is and what the speed should be there is posted. And the other items that you have here, the street marking and bicycle facilities and crosswalks. So is it our intent to look at those lower cost options before moving to, and is there a standard for which you will look at the higher costs? Is it traffic count, accidents?
Definitely. I mean, our goal is to utilize the most cost-effective method to solve the problem that we're seeing on the particular street. And like I said, staff's recommendation is always to try to put as much on-street parking as we can on there. That's the best traffic and the most cost-effective for the city traffic calming measure we can do. And then we move into pavement markings or the speed feedback signs. And I would say that an approach that shows how we did this was on Moss Avenue. We started off by striping a parking lane, and that was to narrow the driving lanes and give a definition to try to slow cars down. We weren't seeing as much compliance as we would like, and so we moved into the speed feedback signs as a next measure. And basically, once we start these traffic calming measures, I think it's a continual discussion with the neighborhoods and feedback on whether they're working and things that we can do to make them work.
Thank you. Councilmember Riggenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Director Reese, for the time and energy that you and the Traffic Commission and Traffic Engineer Stouffer put into this. This is really useful. And I think, as the Mayor mentioned, this being neighborhood driven is something that we can all really wrap our arms around, because oftentimes as council members we hear from one or two people who may or may not represent the majority of the neighborhood. So to actually have a framework for folks to work in, I think gives all of us a little more comfort in knowing that we're addressing the legitimate concerns of the neighborhood. So I think this is great. And as I'm looking through this, I recently was out of town, and the mid-block chokers is something that I noticed a lot of, and it's too bad that falls under the higher cost options, because I think that could be a really intriguing thing to look at down the road. So thanks for the efforts.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Grabe.
I don't think it would be a surprise to any of the district council members, or probably most of the at-large people, but on the top 3 list of complaints every time we go out to a neighborhood meeting is speeding cars. And I think our mayor on one occasion opined about the predilection of all too many drivers in the city of Peoria to not observe the speed limit. And I think most everybody on the council realizes that even though we're looking at ways of rebalancing the equation between the automobile on the one hand and the bicyclist and pedestrian on the other, an important piece of this, as your predecessor said at Bradley University some time ago, is law enforcement. We have to have that as part of this. Now, it's not all of it, because they're trying to design our roadways to discourage speeding. But at some point in time, this council needs to take a look at beefing up our traffic enforcement. Manager, I think you heard something to that effect some time ago. And not because we want to raise revenue, although, yeah, guess what, we do need revenue. But I've had numerous folks, certainly in my district, say, hey, they can park a squad car in my driveway anytime if they want to, because we're worried about our kids. And certainly as the council person for the heart of the city, 2nd District, which has the most densely populated zip code in Bradley University and all those neighborhoods, about 10 neighborhoods nearby, and all these grade schools and so on and so forth. It's a big deal. And the work of your department and certainly the Traffic Commission is vitally important to maintaining the quality of life in our neighborhoods. And again, I appreciate what you've done, but I'm just saying again, we have to have that law enforcement piece as well to ensure that there are consequences for people who try to do all kinds of nefarious things. They avoid the speed limit. It doesn't matter whether we have a speed feedback sign up. It doesn't matter if we have a stop sign. It doesn't matter if we have a speed hump. They're going to speed up after the speed hump. They're going to try to run that speed board up as high as they possibly can to 100 miles per hour. We don't let them do that anymore. We cap it off. Those folks need tickets. They really do. So I'm directing this as much to you as I am to my fellow councilors to remind them of the discussion we've had in the past and to our acting police chief tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing no lights, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Jensen?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
18-319 is a request to receive and file a presentation by Peoria Public Works Department on snow removal operations.
Director Maroon?
So what we're going to share with you tonight is a portion of our 2018-19 snow plan as we go into this snow season. Before we begin, I'd like to just share with you that, well, actually what I'd like to do is thank you for giving us the opportunity to be here tonight, because I truly don't believe that we can get enough of this information out. We can answer these questions and talk about snow and some of our procedures throughout the snow season. It doesn't cover everybody. So hopefully this will touch a lot of people tonight if they're out there watching, listening. Appreciate this offer. So what we're going to talk about is our current operations, and it will also include some sidewalk snow removal of part of our operation. And what we'll cover tonight is we'll cover current operations, the winter season staffing, equipment inventory, parking, and then, of course, the sidewalk snow removal. This is our winter season staffing that we are working with this year. We have 36 permanent maintenance worker employees. We have 22 temporary maintenance worker employees. They're basically going to be here as snow operation support, but they will help us throughout the winter months, and they're typically here till the end of March. Getting back to the last slide, I did want to mention that the employees that you see in this picture, those are some of our full-time staff, and on an annual basis here for the past few years, they've been attending an APWA, American Public Works Association, snow rodeo, which is basically a statewide event outside of Chicago. Chicago has their own event. The rest of the state has it through APWA here. These employees, I just want to share with you, and I'm pretty proud to say that we've got a pretty good group of guys that and ladies that that are snow plowers, are snow fighters, and they come back every year with quite a bit of hardware. They place in the top 3 in many categories on an annual basis, which is really pretty impressive because of the number of people and the number of snowplow drivers they're competing against. And it includes some driving challenges on a course, as well as some testing, some written testing and some other types of testing. So they do very well. I think that's just something that I wanted to share with you to let you know the type of employees that we are employing, and also training the new employees as they come in. So moving on to the priority route system. Currently, our routes consist of 20 snow routes. That's 483 centerline miles. Of those 483 centerline miles, 217, approximately 217, is on primary streets, which basically, breaking that down, each snow route or each driver has in the range of 10.5 miles per route on primary streets. Okay, that's center line, that's going one direction. They range anywhere from 7 miles to 14 miles, depending on the size of the routes, which the other picture, the picture on the right up there, does depict, based on color, where all the routes are located. We also have designated hill routes, and depending on need and the storm, we can run anywhere from 2 hill routes to 4 hill routes, and those are support trucks that stay on the hills that will allow for travelers to get from the bluff to the valley and from the valley to the bluff on a regular basis. So we'll keep those trucks. There are 1-ton plow trucks that we utilize there. The tandem plow operation that we go into, as the picture on the left there depicts, we group anywhere from 2 to 4 trucks together, and we can clear pavement in one pass, usually one direction in one pass, especially on some of our wider streets. That helps us to expedite getting the snow off of the pavement to help our, the travelers and the citizens getting around town in a better fashion. A lot of times, you may see this rarely during the daytime, but it doesn't work so well with traffic. It works much better when we can keep the trucks together. So a lot of times we're doing that in the overnight operations, which brings us to the around-the-clock operations. We still have that in our plan, to where when there's a need, we can go into a around-the-clock operation, and that consists of 24 hours, 2 12-hour shifts of all of our plow trucks running through that operation. And basically our goal with that is to remove all snow on all streets within 24 hours after the snowfall has ended. At that point is when we can go into the residential streets, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. Our primary routed streets, the applications that we give them are plowing and salting. There is another treatment that we have that we're using now, which is our brine application. But this is the applications that we use on primary streets. The residential streets do not receive salt application, but they do receive plowing after 2 inches of snow has fallen and accumulated on the streets after the snow has ended. We also have a no bare pavement policy on residential streets. So the fact is we're going to go in and we're going to plow the streets, but based on the temperatures, the precipitation, you're not necessarily going to see bare pavement on residential streets until obviously Mother Nature comes about and helps with temperatures and sunshine. I would make one slight note to that on residential streets. Although it says no salt application, I am going to tell you that we will take into consideration when there's an ice storm or when certain specific streets, such as brick streets, have a tendency to get away from us. And we have to be cognizant of the school buses. Not to mention the people that live there, but the school buses is vital to make sure that they're able to travel on those streets. So Director Reese and I will then have that discussion and make sure that we're on the same page, because as our snow plan reads, we are not actually utilizing salt on residentials. At that point, once we've reached about 5 inches of snow, we will go in and once everything else is done, we go into the alleys, and we have approximately about 80 miles of alleys throughout town that we plow open. Getting into the equipment inventory, this is just a little breakdown of what we have, what we're utilizing. We have 22 salt/plow trucks. We have 3 trucks with wing plows, as you see depicted in this picture here, and then various other equipment. So the 22 salt trucks that we utilize, that gives us enough trucks to run the routes, but in addition to any breakdowns or if we need extra trucks on the street, it gives us a couple of spare trucks to utilize. The 3 trucks with the wing plows, one of the things that we really like about this setup is that it allows us to be more efficient in terms of we can run a wing plow truck and utilize 1 driver and 1 truck, and it'll do the work of 2 trucks and 2 drivers. So we like that for our efficiency purposes and for expediting the clearing of the streets as well. For future considerations, to give you an idea, we utilize these trucks mainly in the northern and the western parts of the city where we have wider streets. And they do a tremendous job on expediting the snow removal. So since we like these so well, we're looking at our snow routes quite often, and we're always analyzing what's next, what's better, what do we need to do. We're looking at a possibility of adding one of these when the day comes that we can purchase more equipment, adding 1 more of these to our fleet, which I think will get us to where we need to be. There are certain parts of town where they're not effective because of cars parking on the streets and things of that nature, but there are many parts of town, and as we grow, they become more effective for us. This is getting into some of the other support equipment that we utilize. Beyond our loaders and our backhoes and skid steers, we have this brine machine as shown in this slide. And that allows us to produce brine in-house as opposed to purchasing brine. We're able to make brine at about 2 cents per gallon as opposed to purchasing it and have it delivered by 4,400 gallons at a time with a tractor trailer at about 40 cents a gallon. So we've reduced the cost by the purchase of this machine, and it takes very little salt. I'm going to approximate things here now. About a ton of salt with water, and that's the formula, it's salt and water, will allow us to produce about 4,000 gallons of salt of brine. So we really think that this is an advantage for us to be able to make this brine in-house. This is a brine applicator that we use. It's a tank on the back of one of our 7-ton dump trucks. It has a capacity of about 1,000 gallons, the one that we're using right now. It allows us to spray brine on bare pavement as long as it's not wet. And we can go out up to 72 hours before a snowfall or even an ice storm and apply the brine to the pavement, and it'll stick until there's precipitation on the pavement. It'll stick to the pavement for 72 hours. That gives us a head start as we get into a storm situation. And when the snow first starts falling, a lot of times this will give us an advantage to stay ahead of the storm until we get our trucks out on the street. The snow blower, this is our Snowcrete snow blower. It fits on the front of one of our end loaders. And that is used in a couple of applications. We can use that to, if we have drifting, as we do a lot out north where we have open fields. It'll blow the snow off the pavement. It'll open up the drifts. It can also be used as a snow removal, where we can load that snow into dump trucks, tractor trailer, tandem trucks, and so forth, to completely remove the snow off the street. So we got a couple of options to use with this snow blower. Getting into parking, emergency snow routes is where our no parking actually goes into play based on the signage. The signs are posted on emergency snow routes only. As you see, the top sign, it's for primary routed streets. So those, once we have 2 inches or more snow coming, that goes into effect automatically. We don't have to call that for a no parking ban. It stays into effect for 48 hours, but it can be extended if need be. And again, that would be another discussion that we would have prior to extending it. The bottom sign, as you see it, it's worded a little bit differently. They both talk about no parking 2 or more inches of snow, but the one on the bottom is it says from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. The reason for that is those are posted in the downtown business district, so that allows us to get on those streets in the overnight hours and clear those so that the cars and vehicles can then park on the street during the day to do their normal business or their work hours in the downtown area. And again, the no parking is enacted when accumulation reaches 2 inches or more with another inch or more prediction. The fines are $50. They'll go up to $75 after 7 days and $100 after 30 days. The tickets can be reissued every 24 hours. So that is only for the safety of the travelers. That's just to make sure that we're keeping the pavement cleared from curb to curb. The citywide no parking ban. This is a different type of a no parking ban. This is when it is called by the city manager or his designee. This is a complete citywide ban that goes into effect when we need to be able to get to all streets throughout a storm. And it may be utilized in a specific area only, specific routes or specific areas of town, or it can be utilized throughout the whole city. And hopefully this will answer some of the questions that we do get about this parking ban. When this complete citywide parking ban goes into effect, in order for us to be able to clear streets curb to curb, we still allow people to park on the streets, but we go into an even-odd mode of parking. So on even days of the month, you park on the even side of the street. We can now clear the odd side, and the next day, you move your car from the even side to the odd side of the street. Now we can clear the other side. So within a couple of days, we're going to have that street cleared curb to curb. We do give a 3-hour notice for motorists to move those cars. That's usually done through the media and any other fashion that we can get that information out. It remains in effect until terminated. It's not a 48-hour. It's until terminated. And again, the fines are $50. So this next portion, I'm going to turn over to Director Reese to cover the sidewalk snow removal.
Okay, thank you. One thing that has been a topic of conversation for the past couple of years with council is how to address snow removal on sidewalks. And there's an ordinance in place that actually prohibit or it calls for the removal of sidewalk in commercial areas or commercial properties in Peoria if it's within 24 hours after the storm. If it's less than 6 inches, and it gives you 36 hours if it's more than 6 inches. So we do have 577 miles of sidewalk in the city. On our arterial streets, which is primarily where the commercial corridors are, there's 105 miles of sidewalks in the city. So it's section 26251 in the ordinance that calls for the removal of sidewalk. And basically it's that 4-foot clear area must be cleared 24 hours if it's less than 6 inches, or within 36 hours if it's more. There is a penalty involved if people do not remove the snow from the sidewalk, and or the city has the ability to remove the snow and then charge the property owner for that. We've been working to try to come up with a plan and try to get the word out more on this ordinance, since it was adopted, I think, 3 or 4 years ago, and we're trying to get the word out and get as much compliance as we can. And actually, so businesses understand the benefit of having a clear sidewalk in front of their business. So this is one of the, and this is actually a picture in Peoria on a commercial corridor, and this is something that we've worked with a company in town here to come up with, that we are going to mail out on the commercial corridors. And it basically, it's a picture of a pedestrian not being able to walk on the sidewalk but having to walk in the street because the sidewalks are not clear. And so the thought behind this is that we can at least get the notification out, and we're going to get these mailed out here early November, so that hopefully businesses have an opportunity to reach out to their contractors that clear their parking lots, because all of them are currently clearing their parking lots, and just so they can add the sidewalk to that snow removal that they're doing. And then the second picture is just another one in the downtown area, and just showing a picture of people walking in the street, and what the effect that has when the sidewalks are not cleared. And like I said, we're trying to use this before we go out and levy a fine against people, just to bring the awareness to these commercial businesses that there is a ordinance that they are supposed to remove the snow from the sidewalk. And with that, I think either me or Director Maroon are open for questions.
Okay, I have council members here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Director Maroon, just a few questions for you. I thought last year, by the way, you and your team did an outstanding job last winter. Thank you very much for that. I didn't see in your presentation, you and I had many conversations about this. Number one, when you clear the streets, will it be curb to curb next year?
Yes, we do curb to curb. There may be an instance where, just to give you a little heads up, on a major storm, a big blizzard type, we may do things to where we'll go in and clear a path in and out to at least keep traffic moving on some of the streets, and then once we can get everybody moving, then we can go back and do the curb to curb again.
In your presentation, I'm noticing the sidewalk. You talk about more than 6 inches, not on the roads, though. You and I talked about that also before. What our citizen expectations should be when we get a big snowstorm of 8-10 inches? I mean, should it be cleared within 24 hours, or should it be 36 hours? What the expectation should be if we get a lot more snow?
Over 6 inches, we have up to 36 hours to clear.
That was not in your presentation, though, but it's the same thing for the street, though, correct?
That is correct.
So above 6 inches, expectation should be 36 hours.
36 hours.
Thank you very much. Last question. I got some subdivision in my district. Salt, people's opinion, salt kind of hurt the streets. Can homeowner association opt out of getting salt in their neighborhood if they feel that it's really detriment to the roads?
Can they get salt, you say?
Opt out. I mean, can they call the city and say, our homeowner association, we vote not to have any salt put down because it's really destroy our roads?
Right. Well, that's typically that's why we don't go into residential streets with salt. Now, and another reason is because it's going to add a lot of dollars to the budget. You know, utilizing salt on all, I mean, as you see the number of streets we have. If they get, are you saying they can, asking if they can get their own salt?
A homeowner association president could call you and say, Mr. Maroon, we don't want salt in our neighborhood.
Absolutely.
It could. Okay. I just want to check. I'm getting, believe it or not, I am getting that question. People don't like to have salt put down because it destroys the road. So thank you very much.
Everyone's happy that want the salt.
Councilmember Rodrigo.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Maroon, great presentation. Thank you for bringing this forward. I think it's a lot of useful information. With that, and I guess maybe this is for you, maybe it's for our city manager, Uric, can we make this available on the website? I think that there may be a lot of people who kind of go back throughout the season to be able to look at this. You also mentioned that we'll be notifying when those the snow routes are. And maybe, again, this is a question for the city manager. Can we just kind of hit for the public where those sort of might be posted? Are they going to be posted on the website, radio, Journal Star, TV stations, so that they kind of know where to look for those?
The above. We also work with our communication specialist, Stacy Peterson, to get it on Twitter, Facebook, Nextdoor. It'll go out in every social media possibility that there is. And we do send out a press release with that, and so that it kind of to help expedite how those messages get out.
Third, on the commercial snow removal for sidewalks, can you discuss just quickly vacant properties or properties where it may be a commercial space, nothing's in it? Are those required also to have the snow removed? And
so the way the ordinance is written is that if it's zoned commercial, the expectation is that the snow is removed from the sidewalk.
Councilmember Grab.
Public Works is public safety, whether it's fixing the potholes that jar our cars, potentially causing accidents, or keeping the roads safe for our kids, our school buses, our cars, getting to and from work. I was somewhat intrigued by a statement that was made about, I think it was something to the effect of, as it stands now, there will be no salt on residential streets. Did I hear that correctly?
That's per the snow plan, yes. It is laid out where we don't.
And the snow plan is flawed. You need to go back and work on it. One of the worst things that can happen to our city is a freezing rain. That can cause as many deaths as a lot of snow. And I can't possibly believe that we could have our residential side streets turning into roller rinks and say we're not going to put salt down on the residential streets. Director Reese, you know you and I have had this discussion. And we had this discussion last winter because IDOT dropped the ball, and I mean big time, causing lots of people to get hurt, their cars ruined in some places, damaged. And that's either on 74 West, 74 East, 55 North, 55 South, because they knew a storm was coming. They had to see the forecast that I was even posting on my own Facebook page. And they did not take care of public safety. And you remember that particular storm. And I hope we're not replicating that mistake here in the city of Peoria. Now, I think maybe Director Maroon covered it in a way by saying that if we know a storm's coming, we will go out and use maybe the brine approach, I think you said, Director Maroon. So I want you to kind of elaborate a little bit on that statement, because otherwise I'm very alarmed.
With the brine, we can use that in two fashions. We can go out and spray it on dry pavement, as I mentioned earlier. We can also utilize brine to spray on our salt as it's coming out of the truck onto the spinner before it's applied to the street. As an additive to help that salt work more expeditiously. So that's the two applications that we use with the brine. Going out in advance, we cover overpasses, and the majority, right now we're working on trying to get a route to where we can get all primary streets covered at least one time with the brine application. Again, that's just to give us a head start ahead of the storm, mainly to keep the precipitation from freezing and bonding to the pavement. And if it can allow us to keep it from bonding to the pavement, we're ahead of the game. So one other thing about the salt, we also can use calcium chloride, which we spray on the product itself, not on the street as we do the brine. Calcium chloride, we typically use that once the temperatures reach below 20 degrees. Brine will work to about that 20-degree mark, and then we would switch over to the calcium chloride.
But you do understand what my concern is.
I absolutely do, and that's why I actually mentioned, and I do consult with Director Reese about these situations when we get into an icy situation, it doesn't have to be ice. It can be that the temperatures are going to drop after we've been out and we've cleared streets and we've got not dry pavement, it's wet pavement, but now it's going to refreeze. We have to look at the refreeze. Our job doesn't end when the snow is gone. It continues until we know that we can travel safely, and so that's why we're in constant communication and making that decision and it just being a good steward of the budget, but at the same time making sure that our travelers are safe. That's the key component.
Right. And Councilman, one thing I'd like to add, our process that we do is typically we do residential streets and we plow them. We don't salt them. If it's 2 inches or more, then we get in. But we do evaluate those residential streets, and if they become ice packed, our first step is definitely to go through and salt intersections first, and then continuing to evaluate. And then if it becomes an icy situation, we do go through and we'll salt the residentials to break up that ice pack.
And it really should be a rarity for us to have a storm hit without some knowledge in advance, given the precision of our weather forecast models. And I think that's what you were referring to, Director Maroon, that when you know that something's coming, you sometimes will take preventive action, which will hopefully stop some of these streets and subdivisions and so on from becoming roller rinks. And I know when I've seen them and I've called your public safety employees, public works employees have gone out and addressed it. But I just was alarmed when I heard that, and then I thought, well, no, he said something about taking preventive measures ahead of time. But this, what happened last year on Interstate 74 and 55, it was just awful. And, I know that we don't want to see that replicated. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Any further questions or discussion on the snow plan for this year? If not, I would entertain a motion to receive and file. Councilman Sear, seconded by Councilman Gribb. Thank you to Director Maroon and Reese, Councilwoman Akeson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just would like to send compliments to staff for creating the very creative flyers that they're sending to the commercial businesses. If you could you pull those back up? Because, and go to the one before this. Yes. So this is so clever, and it's a great visual to remind businesses of how important it is for them to keep their sidewalks clear. And if the people at home can't read this, it says, we don't all want to go dashing through the snow. And it's just very clever. So for the staff that pulled it together, it's great. And I love it. And then the next one, clear your sidewalks and keep our feet out of the street. It's just great. And for Councilwoman Jensen's benefit, she asked if, she texted me to ask if there was a presentation, and I said yes, and it's too bad she's not here to see it, because it's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? We have a motion and a second. Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Jensen?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We're at unfinished business. 18-275 is a communication from the City Manager and Director of Community Development with a request to defer until December 11th, 2018, an ordinance amending Chapter 13 of the Code of the City of Peoria pertaining to refuse containers.
Motion to defer, Councilman Sear, seconded Councilman Gribb. Discussion on the deferral. Seeing none, please cast your ballots. Councilmember Jensen.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
18-173 is a request to defer until November 5, 2018, the following. A is to accept the lowest responsive bid and approve a contract with M.R. Mason for tuck pointing and exterior maintenance of Fire Station Number 4 at 2711 Southwest Jefferson in the amount of $99,985. And B is to adopt an ordinance amending the budget.
Okay, motion to defer, Councilmember Moore, seconded by Councilmember Sear. Discussion on the deferral. Seeing none, please cast your ballots. Councilwoman Nicholson, thank you. Councilmember Jensen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
18-278 is a request by Councilmember Akeson for the following. A is to request to reconsider item number 18-278, which is the redevelopment agreement with Peoria Opportunities Foundation and a budget amendment.
Councilmember Akeson.
Thank you, Mayor Artis. 2 weeks ago, we voted in favor of this, and I think the vote was unanimous, but there were several council members that were not present for that vote, and in particular, the district council member that whose district this project is primarily in. The mayor was not here, and then council member Rodrigo. And I think that it's important for us to really discuss this at the city council level for a variety of reasons. So my intent last 2 weeks ago was to vote in favor, knowing that I could bring this forward for more discussion and to give me time to get some questions answered and work with staff, because according to the Urban Land Institute, I think is the agency that has estimated what the nation's deficiency in decent low-income housing. We are deficient by approximately 3,000 units, and it could even be more. Is that right, Director Black?
That is the number that I have also seen.
And because of that, it's important that we get these projects done. And because there is such a deficiency, it is going to be very likely that low-income housing projects, decent low-income housing, will come to all council districts. So with that said, when we start to peel through the layers of what needs to take place, the process that we watched in this particular item, the city gave Peoria Opportunities Foundation 17 properties in December of 2017. And then in February of 2018, the mayor, the city manager, and the district council person sent a letter to IDA saying the city was supportive of this project, knowing that and stating in the letter that it would have to come back for the majority of the council to approve. And as it turns out, it was a budget amendment. It requires 2/3 of our vote. When I looked at the information that we were received, and I don't know what was copied for this particular reconsideration, do all the council members have the document in total, and is it copied in color? Madam Clerk, do you know? So we're reconsidering this, and they don't have any of the document with them. Is that correct?
That's correct. They had it.
All right, so that's unfortunate, but you'll just have to take my word for it then. I also sent to all the council members on their email, if they can get it on their phone, a photograph of one of the properties. And it's an important photograph for us to all take a look at, and I don't know if that's appropriate, Corporation Council, for them to look at that picture, or is that not appropriate?
I think what we need to do first is actually have the vote on the reconsideration, and if the vote passes, then we go into the details.
Okay, I move to approve. I move to reconsider this item.
Okay, Is there a second?
I second it. I second it.
Seconded by Councilwoman Jensen. So the motion on the floor is to reconsider this item. Please cast your ballots. Okay. Councilmember Jensen.
Yes.
The motion fails with 3 ayes and 7 noes. Voting aye, Councilmembers Akeson, Graham, and Jensen. Madam Clerk.
18-302 is a communication from the City Manager and Finance Director Comptroller with a request to receive and file a continued discussion of the 2019 revised budget.
Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To members of the council, you have a binder on your desks, which is the revised 2019 budget. We will load this up onto your iPads as well for you. Since you just got it this evening, and I apologize, as we were working to try and put this all together from the policy session that we had last week, what I'd like to do is maybe spare you going through it in detail and ask that we maybe spend a little bit of time just right now talking process first, and then we can come back and jump into this in more detail maybe next week. We had originally planned to have the budget hearing next week on October 30th and then jump into the water items. What I'd like to do is carry this continued discussion back over for the night of the 30th, and I'll, at that point in time, jump into the budget discussions in greater detail. The next meeting that we would have would be Monday night, November 5th. So that would not be Tuesday evening, the 6th, because that's election day. So what we wanted to do is move that up a night. So we will have a very rare Monday evening council meeting here where we'll discuss the budget in detail. Then we'll jump back to having Tuesday meetings on Tuesday the 13th and then Tuesday the 20th. So overall, the budget that you have in front of you does reflect the direction that I got from council last Monday or Tuesday evening as part of the policy session, and we'll be happy to jump into that in greater detail, give you time to read it, give you time to react to it, and then we can have that discussion with you on the 30th.
Okay. So for tonight, it's a receive and file. Okay. Do we have a motion? Councilman Sear, seconding Councilman Graham. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, please cast your ballots. Councilmember Jensen.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
If there's no further unfinished business?
Any further unfinished business to come before the council tonight? Unfinished? I'm seeing no lights.
We would be at new business.
New business. New business to come before the council. Councilman Ruckriegel.
Thank you, Mayor. City Manager, in light of the fact that we still have a little ways to go on our furloughs and layoffs, and so that this council can be as most effective with its time that we can, and I realize that in most cases the people that we are probably interacting the most with have been good about letting us know when those furloughs and layoffs are going to be. And of course, if we do email, we get a response back from the automated that says. But in a way of planning, can we get a list of the remaining furloughs, layoffs that we can anticipate from city staff between now and the end of the year? And it might actually help so that we know who also has had them, maybe just to give us that full list from beginning of the furlough. It'd be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilman Riggenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two quick things. I got a call from a constituent last week asking about child car seats and safety in that regard, and she had tried to find a place that would help install it and make sure it's installed correctly. AMT provides that service on the second Tuesday of every month from 1 to 3 in the afternoon. We have some flyers that I'll leave in the city manager, mayor's office. And also OSF, Children's Hospital, has a toll-free number that will also, maybe we can post this on our website or something so that folks know that if they have any questions as to whether or not their child's car seats are installed correctly, that there are those resources in Peoria to take care of that. And the second thing, I just wanted to make sure everybody had Thursday and P-Town Soup on their calendar. That'll be at the Prince of Peace Church on Arcadia in the East Bluff. That's a great grassroots organization that is really doing a lot to help keep our neighborhoods safe. So I encourage everybody to stop by this coming Thursday at 6 p.m.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Akeson.
Thank you. I would like the city manager to inform the council when we are going to have an affordable housing policy session to follow up on the March affordable housing policy session, that after consultation with Director Black, he really does not know what the direction of the council is. And since I was denied my opportunity to share with you my concerns, I would also like for this housing policy to give specific information about low-income housing tax credits and inform the council about what we can do to make certain that when we spend millions of dollars on infill development, we are using the taxpayers' dollar in with the most fiduciary responsibility possible. This is an extraordinarily important conversation. My intent was to vote in favor of that project. I only wanted to use this opportunity for us all to understand the very serious nature of when we take taxpayer dollars and we invest them, that we're doing so in the most meaningful way with a strategic plan, which we don't have. So I'm really sorry that I was blindsided like that. So I appreciate, I'm hoping that in the future we can have a really quality conversation about affordable housing.
Councilmember Graham.
Well, you are certainly all invited to West Main Street for One World Cargo's silver anniversary, and that'll be Thursday between 4:30 and 6 o'clock p.m. Other West Main businesses will be there as well, with complimentary hummus and other snacks to eat and giveaways, chalk art contest, a lot of the public art on display. Primatiques, the Sunbeam Building businesses, all will be there. This is one of the most vibrant stretches in our city, and you're all invited once again to celebrate One World's silver anniversary Thursday, 4:30 to 6. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sear.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My colleagues and I, a couple of weeks ago, were very fortunate to be invited by Chief Olahai and Ryan Brady from the union, Local 150, to spend a few hours with our firefighters at their tower, their training ground. And I just want to report that it was a tremendous experience. I really appreciate spending 4 or 5 hours with them and really understand, or try to understand. Really, it's just a small window in what they do every day, but the science of fire and the training to receive and what they try to teach us that day, it was just, for me, it was just a great experience, and being part of a team just reminded me of a lot of great stories many years ago when I was younger. But it was just a great day and a great few hours, and I would just want to say thank you to Chief Willai and Mr. Brady for inviting us and putting the day together. Thank you very much.
Councilman Ruckriegel.
Thank you, Mayor. I did forget to mention that just as a reminder to the public, on October 31st, City Hall here will be open to a Halloween party where from 3 to 5, all are invited to come in costume, trick or treat between the different departments, have a little bit of fun, and actually get to see some of those that actually serve our city each and every day. I think it should be a great time to be able to tour your City Hall and to spend some time within these hallowed halls.
Okay. Any further new business to come before the council? New business? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
We would be at citizens' opportunity to address the City Council.
Thank you. Citizens to address, we need your name, and we have a 5-minute speaking limit. Up first is Mary Hayes.
My name is Mary Hayes. I live at 2915 West Ann Street. How are you tonight? I want to tell you that I am not a financial expert. I'm not an engineering expert. I'm not a media expert, but I am a citizen expert. And I know the struggles that the citizens are going through. I have been there myself. It took me 4 hours on the city bus to purchase 1 jar of mayonnaise. This food desert situation is it's impossible to maneuver. The Peoria Area Food Bank is going to be giving a free giveaway at East Bluff Community Center next Monday at 9 o'clock. So anybody in the viewing area that needs food, go to the East Bluff Community Center at 9 o'clock. I am terribly upset about the road situation. I don't have a car. I ride the bus. But they put on the ballot a referendum for a tax increase to fix the roads. Now, I'm not a tax expert, but I am a citizen expert. And we don't have the money to finance the roads. I'm terribly upset about the housing situation. In Lincoln Terrace, there has been found black mold. And the people who reported the black mold have been evicted. Now, I'm not a housing authority or an expert, but I am a citizen expert. And I do know what it's like to be evicted, because the same person that owns Lincoln Terrace owned one of the houses that I was living in, and he refused to repair my house, so I had to leave my house. So I understand what these people are going through. I understand that something needs to be done, and something needs to be done very quickly, because there's an election coming up. And it don't look good. It don't look good. I'm not an expert, but I do know what the citizens are going through. I know the struggles that they're having. I know what it's like to have a $65 water bill when you've had a leak, and your landlord says that he'll help you pay for your water leak for the water department, and he only gives you $20. So I know what the people are going through, and I'm tired of it. And I only have 56 minutes left. And you guys need to do something about this quick, because we're going to clean house in the horseshoe.
Okay. Up next, we have Barbara Gertler. No, it was Barbara Gertler. Merle, you're about 3 down the road.
My name is Barbara Gertler, and I live at 3415 North Sheridan Road in Peoria. As an active volunteer and member of the Heart of Illinois group, Sierra Club, I am presenting the following statement on behalf of our group. The Heart of Illinois Group Sierra Club Board voted to support due diligence research to assess costs and feasibility of public ownership of our water supply. We urge the Peoria City Council to vote to proceed with due diligence because of concerns for protecting our water resources now and the future, and the need for much greater transparency regarding our water supply. It is clear from the decades of Illinois American operations that privatization has limited public accountability for what citizens are paying for water. Over the years, we, the public, pay more because of water rate increases, yet we see more water line leaks and breaks. We don't see comprehensive neighborhood by neighborhood work to address the water line problems and the lead water lines that we all know impact our oldest neighborhoods. We cannot file Freedom of Information requests for details on what is being done regarding these problems or how much of our water payments are sent elsewhere. Because Illinois American is a private company and it refuses to voluntarily share that information. Heart of Illinois Sierra Club sees water as a precious natural resource that should be protected for the public and environmental good. The public trust doctrine puts public interests before private interests. When a resource is held in the public trust, it is more difficult for private parties to inflict harm. Harm could mean selling more water than our aquifers can sustain, or using water treatments intended to save costs, but that are detrimental to public health. Public control of our water supply is essential to protect our water resources from corporate raiding. We want to see our local aquifer protected for future generations and safeguarded from potential sales to bottling companies, as is being done elsewhere. Water privatization sacrifices local control of services that are critical for public health and well-being. How many Illinois American water users know that our water is treated with chloramines, which are a chlorine and ammonia chemical? This is an alternative disinfectant to chlorine, but it has not been studied for health effects. The EPA states that there are no skin or respiratory studies on chloramine as used as a disinfectant for drinking water. The EPA also shows that there are inadequate cancer studies and no allergy studies have been done. How much information has the Illinois American water customers received about chloramines? Does the public have the right to know more about what is in our water and what impacts it may have on our bodies and on the environment? We think so. Heart of Illinois Sierra Club urges the Peoria City Council to vote yes for due diligence and reclaim our public water supply for the good of Peorians now and in the future. Thank you.
Next up, we have Michael O'Brien. Is Mike still here? Okay. Next, we have Ryan Cannon.
Thank you, Mayor Artis and members of the council, for the opportunity to speak tonight. On behalf of the Peoria Area Association of Realtors, my name is Ryan Cannon. I live at 312 West Maywood in Peoria, and I'm the chairman of the PAR Government Affairs Committee and a director on the PAR Board of Directors. The Peoria Area Association of Realtors has over 850 members, with well over 200 members living in the city of Peoria. As we are all aware, property taxes are a huge issue for our region, an increasingly difficult discussion realtors have almost daily with their clients. We're often challenged more with devoting more effort to selling the property taxes than the actual purchase of the home. Because sadly, the monthly amount for property taxes often equals or exceeds the amount they'll pay spending on the principal and interest. We believe it's imperative to find additional sources of revenue other than property and sales tax to help fund city and county services. We recognize the challenges municipalities and schools have with balancing their budgets, especially when faced with unfunded state mandates. Ideas such as the public safety pension fee discussed by this council last week would just be another tax on property owners. For this reason, we believe it's imperative all viable options are considered for generating new sources of income, including the one being discussed tonight, the option to purchase the public water system. Municipal ownership is not an out-of-the-box concept, but it would require an impartial, fact-based analysis to determine if it's a viable option for our community or not. We realize the state statute may guide how revenue from the water company may be used, but even that knowledge and clarification should be a component of what is revealed through the due diligence effort. How we can simply say no when there's an ongoing struggle to balance budgets, often resulting in placing additional burden on our residents by raising property or sales tax and or creating new fees or assessments, or all of the above. Recently, PAR sent a letter to the members of the Peoria City Council, and I'm going to share it again with you now. On behalf of the Peoria Area Association of Realtors and its more than 850 members, we're writing to express our board's continued support of the due diligence examination of the remunicipalization of Peoria's water system. We strongly urge the Peoria City Council to cast a vote in favor of the recommendations made by the CEO Council on behalf of the citizens of Peoria. The Peoria Area Association of Realtors believes you have a fiduciary duty to obtain all information necessary, including an accurate appraisal of the system, before making a well-informed decision regarding the purchase of the Peoria District of Illinois American Water Company. As homeowners and real estate professionals, we believe due diligence by the council, including the appraisal, is compulsory before an unbiased business decision can be made on behalf of the citizens you represent. We understand a vote in favor of exercising the repurchase option would trigger the appraisal process, but would not obligate the city to make the purchase of Illinois American Water Company. Only after a fair market price is established would the city have to commit to making the purchase or not. Without considering all relevant information available, including current appraisal, we'd question how the council could make a fully informed decision on this matter, possibly overlooking a viable source of revenue for the city. Please vote in favor of authorizing due diligence examination, providing all the relevant information required to reach a decision impacting the entire community. PAR's been selling the Peoria area for almost 100 years. We're advocating for a vote yes to conduct due diligence examination on behalf of the residents, our community, before making this important business decision. Thank you.
Up next, we have Merle Widmer.
Now, Mr. Mayor and City Council people, City Manager Patrick, and my former County Board member, where'd he go? Tim Riggenbach, and audiences, wherever. My subject will come to the forefront quickly. First, my credentials. I founded a company called Widmer Incorporated in 1964, which is now known today as Widmer Interiors out on Allen Road. I started with 2 people and $2,500. Widmer Interiors is now the largest company downstate Illinois. In retirement, I was asked to run for the Peoria County Board. I was elected 7 times, twice by my peers. Tim left because he didn't want to hear me. Patrick will acknowledge that. Oh, you're over there. I don't know why I'm looking over here. I was looking for an empty seat over there. Sorry. That'd take off my 5 minutes time there. You got to give some credence to guys 92 years old that stays up past bedtime. Let's see, to a full 3 terms on the Peoria County Board, in days when we had surpluses in all our funds, and that was when I retired in 2010. The last time I spoke before this council, I believe, was 2005. Only Mayor Artis, Eric Turner, and Mr. Graham are members of the council today. The issues are still the same. Buy the water company, but first do due diligence requested by a group known as the CEO Council. In 2005, a group known as the PAAG committed to loaning the City Council $1 million at 9% interest, later reduced to 6.9% interest. The city actually only received $846,000 after early interest payments were deducted, requiring the city to add $170,545 of taxpayers' money to complete the study. The council voted to accept the offer and do the study. Its thoroughness did not satisfy the PAAG. As most are aware, a lawsuit was filed by the PAAG. Those members are listed in my blog, Whitmer Peoria Watch, under the title of Waterlog number 4, dated 3/29/05. Requested the $1 million be paid back plus interest amounting to over $2 million. As I understand, the judge ruled in favor of the PAAG, and while this ruling may be under appeal, it most likely the city will need to come up with $2 million taxpayer dollars. They do not have to pay this group of multi-millionaires. Now we go back with a different group. The CEO Council, of which some of the original PAAG members group are members today, now offering to contribute $400,000 cash with a possible $300,000 extra, leaving the city to pick up the remaining unknown costs to complete a due diligence study that will need to pass the legal interpretation of due diligence. It's known the city is in debt, and their debt is rising. So buy the company and add to the city $16 million, they say, a year. It's often stated, it's by the spokesperson for the CEO and others. Now come the problem facing the city council. They don't have the hundreds of millions of, that the water company will ask for the sale. The CEO spokesman admits that the $16 million a year profit will come, net profit that is, will come to the city only after 25 years. The 25 to 30-year bond is paid in full. But the city, in the meantime, would earn $3 million for that 25 years. It's all speculation. Every project made by the experts in this community have failed to meet their projections.
Merle. Mr. Whitmer? Mr. Whitmer, your microphone is off. Mr. Widmer? Mr. Widmer? Mr. Widmer? Your microphone has been off for 3 minutes. Up next, we have Mary Genzel. Is Mary Genzel still here? Okay. Helen King. Is Helen? Okay.
My name is Mary Genzel, and I'm currently president of the Gift Avenue Neighborhood Association, which is in the East Block. I have watched this council discuss the water issue for some time, and I've listened to proponents and opponents speak on issues that they think are important. But I've heard very little discussion about how the water company affects everyday working Peorians. You've talked about millions of dollars for this or that, but not smaller amounts that we pay every month. So I did some research, and here's what I found. Peorians are paid more for our water than all of our neighbors and nearly all of the communities our size across the state. My current bill for one person, water service, $20, usage, $10.94, fire protection, $4.29, plus the various taxes and et cetera that they add on. In speaking to an American Water representative today, she remarked that the average bill for me is $40. That's one person. Ridiculous. For 6,000 gallons a month, that's the average usage. A typical household, Peoria household, is paying more than $55 a month, depending on the size of their pipe. My friends in East Peoria pay just $36 a month. That's nearly $20 less each month, about $240 a year. That's real money to me and to my neighbors. We need that extra money to pay rent or buy food or save for the rainy day. There are so many examples. Bloomington, Normal, Moline, Joliet, and Rockford. And there are dozens of other cities, all have much less expensive water rates. They also have public water systems, every one of them. Springfield's water rates are less than half. Half of ours. People in Springfield pay $22 a month for the same amount of water we are paying $55 a month. Why is that? Have you asked? And Springfield's water is better than ours. The water company has raised rates 70% in the last 15 years. That's a tax on us too. We have water, yet this council has been silent on this ever-increasing expense. The water issue isn't about Illinois American Water or their workers. It's not about the CEO Council. It's not about the city's fight with a few wealthy people. And it's certainly not about protecting $1 billion out of the state corporation. It's about time that Peorians are paying now and in the future for something they must have to live. I want to pay a fair price for water. We're not now. I want the city council to find out that fair price isn't attainable. Thank you.
Up next is Helen King.
Good evening, Mayor and City Councilman. My name is Helen King, and I live in Peoria, Illinois. And I have a statement I want to read to you. I am a community organizer who has been active in various campaigns in Peoria for more than a decade. I care about Peoria, and the idea of the city buying out our water system honestly distresses me. Even the idea of wasting money on another study, especially when we already have a significant budget deficit, is irresponsible. Here is today's reality. Peoria's water is of excellent quality and priced at a good value. I receive encouragement from my friends and acquaintances frequently, urging me to keep supporting Peoria's clean water provider. There's too much at risk for the reliable delivery of our water to have it change hands. I look no further than our combined sewer overflow run by the city of Peoria, which is an absolute mess. Plus, the CSO has a huge financial liability, which all Peoria taxpayers are on the hook for. This all begs the question, if the city is not equipped to manage the sewer overflow, why would we increase their oversight burden with our vitally important drinking water? And last week at the city council meeting, you all said everything was on the table to help solve our budget issues and raise more revenue. If that is truly the case, please consider, instead of buying the water company, exploring a sale of our combined sewer overflow to the Illinois American. Thank you so much.
Eric Larson.
Good evening. I'm Eric Larson. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm the superintendent of the water distribution system for Illinois American Water here in Peoria. I know you've heard probably a lot of these talking points before, so I wanted to share one from my perspective of actually running the operations every day. I love it. It's fun to serve the community, to serve with something as valuable as water. But I am concerned. Part of the joy of going to work is I've got great tools. I've got a great team to work with. And they don't all sit in Peoria, but they're all available to me all the time. They answer their phone on the weekends, after hours. If I've got trouble in Peoria, I can call a great network and get help. And I want to run through some of those with you. For those of you keeping score at home or taking notes, I'll give you the overview, then I'll give you some examples. The first is how we care for our employees. Second is how we leverage our technology. The third is our customer focus. Fourth is our engineering excellence. And then the fifth is our water quality focus. And the examples I'm going to give, I just don't believe they would be available to me if I had to change shirts. And I love Peoria, went to school at Bradley. I live in the area. I'm here for life, okay? But if I change shirts, I don't think these tools are going to be there for me. As far as caring for our employees, we have a broad safety team, safety specialists, and they're focused on this industry. They keep our people safe and going back to their families every day. Our safety record is awesome, and I want that safety team and that safety network. Our company was one of the founding fathers of the Healthcare Alliance. It's a partnership with some major corporations, IBM, American Express, Coca-Cola, ourselves. It's about 40 large cap companies, and we leveraged our size in order to keep our costs down on healthcare. And that's something that we do so we're competitive and our people are cared for. So that's just a couple examples on caring for employees. Leveraging technology, we have an online work order system called MapCall. It's owned by our company. It's going to go away. It's interactive with GIS. It's online. You can go on your phone, a tablet, whatever. But that wouldn't be there. We have a Customer OneView software that lets our field service tech people dialogue with their customers, see their bills, see their usage, show it to them, and help them solve problems. That's also something that would go away on the technology side. We have the Code Red call-out system. That would go away. We have GIS mapping, GIS integrity in our maps. We have experts in that field. Unfortunately, that would go away. It wouldn't be a tool I would have. We have that same support for SCADA, and we have it all integrated with SAP. On the engineering excellence side, we have a planning team, long-term planning. I think I heard that during the meeting tonight. What's our plan? We got that. We're executing it. And this long-term would help keep rates down. It would protect the system, and it would help our customers. We also have hydraulics team, looking at the hydraulics model in Peoria, long-term strategy again. How do we put in the mains? How do we protect the system long-term? We have a huge customer focus. We're obsessed about it. We really are. And we have tools around that with reports. We have meetings around it. We have best practice teams across the state and across the company. We won J.D. Power's 2016 utilities for customer service. Our scores improved for 2017, done mostly by these guys back here. Our scores improved. Unfortunately, we came, I think, in second in 2017, but we improved, and we're going to continue to improve on that customer service side. Then finally, the fifth, I mentioned there was 5. I've got 29 seconds. Water quality focus. We've got water quality experts across the company. We've got them in the state that can answer questions, that can see the emerging contaminants, that can dialogue with us in operations and engineering and plan for it, and keep this water safe, keep the aquifer full, and keep Peoria in water. Thank you.
Up next, we have Terry Colbus.
My name is Terry Colbus. I live out near Brimfield. And it was my pleasure to be here last week, and I heard the start of a discussion about what might be done if there are surpluses from public ownership of the water system. And it intrigued me that you got started in that discussion. I thought it would be useful if I went back and dug into some of my files, see if I could take the next step in providing some specifics and advancing that discussion about what might be done if there are surpluses from the water operations. The first thing is your corporation counsel told you last week, if I understood him correctly, that if an expense was attributable to the water operation, that it could be shifted from the water operations to the corporate fund. Well, what might that mean? Obviously, if there are directly attributable expenses, like maybe somebody in Public Works that's monitoring street openings that Illinois American makes, that'd be easy. But another part would be cost allocating some of the overhead expenses. You might remember that in 2005, when the financing plan was put together, there's an amount in there of $1 million a year for city oversight. But the Corporation Council insisted it had to be done in a more specific way. In my experience in government, what we've always done is a cost allocation plan. We did 16 of them, one each year when I was down at the Planning Commission. So what might that look like? What costs might be allocatable to that specific enterprise fund? What I did was I went back and I looked at the city budget. I looked at the sort of management responsibilities, the council expense, city manager's expense, legal, treasury, IT, and that sort of thing, and identified a number of what that would be. So, that's sort of the pot that you could look at. How much of that could be allocated to a water enterprise fund, if you will? Well, the typical way that would be done is you would compare how much or an easy way to do it would be how much revenue is in the water fund compared to the total city budget. And as you can see in what I handed out to you, that came out to, I think it was 15.9%. And so what all that calculates out to is something close to $1 million, $922,000 annually, is from those allocatable expenses. That was just some math that I did. Obviously, if you want to have more specifics, you can have your own professional city staff look at that. The next category is based on a comment that Randy Ray, your former corporation counsel, made to you back in 2008, that a public body could realize a profit between 5 and 7%. Well, what would that be? What would that amount to in this case? We don't really know how much revenue there is out of Peoria for Illinois American specifically, because they won't tell you that, but it is possible to estimate. What I did was I went back and looked at the 2017 rate case and found that Illinois American's statewide allowance is about $263 million. Now, how much of that comes from Peoria? I also found documents from the Illinois Commerce Commission that showed that somewhere between, you could look at the number of customers, you can look at water sold, and that comes up somewhere between 15 and about 18%. Well, what all that translates into is something around $40 million a year would be revenue from Peoria, okay? 5 to 5, even the conservative side of that at 5%, that calculated out, if you look at the specific numbers that I have in this report, though, for you, at $1,960,000. Another thing that I think that you can do, most utilities many utilities are buried in the public right-of-way, and they pay a franchise fee for that privilege. I think that it would be possible for you to levy something like a franchise fee. I call it in this document a right-of-way usage fee to the enterprise fund. Now, again, I don't want to lead you down a path here, because that would only be applicable if there were sufficient surpluses to be able to draw that money off into the general fund. I also want to make the point that this is different than the franchise fee that was contemplated 5 years ago, because this would come from surpluses. That franchise fee 5 years ago that was proposed would have come from rate increases. And then you've got a couple of other things that you can see in the document. There's the potential to draw money out of the bond issue to repay PAG. If all else fails, you can do some rate relief for customers. Attorney Rick Joseph pointed out to us there is specific legislation that will allow you to combine water revenue with your sewer revenue, and if there's surpluses in water, that can mitigate stormwater fees that you can save from that. I'll let you look at the system viability act stuff. That's a little more in the weeds. Then, of course, also the service coordinator. Thank you for your time.
Up next is Paris McConnell.
Evening. I promise I will not hold you hostage. Just want to make a couple of observations. As I listen to you talk about furlough days, I've lived through events like that, 12, and then 24 with the state. There's several issues that can be with that when you're dealing with the unions. I think those are notable things that you have to pay attention to. One concern that I have for the water buyout, the biggest one, is actually, do we have what I need to hear? And I hear everybody talk about the study and all the money, and somebody's willing to donate hundreds of thousands of dollars to make it happen. Then they might can help us fix the budget, and we won't have to do any furloughs and some other things. But more importantly, I'm concerned about, as we go forward, do we have a short-term plan for our budget, 1 to 2 years of some things that could happen and should happen? And then maybe on a greater scale, a 3 to 5 year as to what we can do to become a financial, fiscally sound group. Because that's what happens to us in our personal life. I experienced a layoff a couple of years ago, and I had to figure things out. And so you learn how to do without. You sacrifice, you trim, you give up something, because the pie in the sky is, I remember as a toddler, I just thought I could have the fastest car on the lot. You know, you make a certain amount of money, you can buy the biggest house and all the things that appear to be an American dream. But I think we have to have common sense. And there are some things, and maybe what I don't want to see in the city is for services to go lacking. And there are essential services that the city should do, because that is what our tax dollars are for that purpose. I would encourage you to look at salaries. I like one of the councilmen made a post earlier today about sacrifices, and if you're going to trim and make your common employee take furlough days, which is a pay cut, you're basically telling them you have to stay home without your salary, and that's going to impact not only families, it's going to impact the community. And I think we have to be sensitive. I also hear how there's the bargaining groups that if you're going to lay off, you start at the bottom instead of at the top, which you kind of rob people of the chance of getting started. I can appreciate anyone who can be on a job for 25, 30 years. And I think sometimes we, as adults, we get selfish because it's about us. It's about our lifestyles. It's about all the things we have grown accustomed to. And we don't think about others and brand new starting families who really need their jobs, because they have to educate their children and pay for a home and all the things that should happen. What I need to hear from you as well, I hear and I understand how profitable it would be for the city, but are we saying we're going to invest 50% of that profit back in the system? I need to hear some detail about how we are going to take this pot of gold and how it's going to be shared within the county and the city, and how is it going to impact? How is it going to serve our citizens, be it job, pension, benefits, all the things that make life work for all of us. So I encourage you to just think it through. Every dime adds up to be a dollar when you start putting them, in the same pot. But I think we need to be sensitive about accountabilities, and we need to look outside of ourselves. So many of us are comfortable, and we don't think it through from the eye of the common person, because we are no longer common. We have some of us have arrived to a certain benchmark or either goal, and we fail to look and see where the common person is. One last note that I just want to talk about, something else that's not about the water buyout. The conflict of interest is a sensitive topic, and I think conflict of interest should be viewed in the scope of anything that is going to be personally profitable, because we all have influence, and in your seats you have a certain amount of influence just because of your service. And so personal profitability, because we all like to give contracts to our friends. Have a great evening.
Next up, we have Darcy Katie.
Good evening, City Council members and Mayor. My name is Darcy Katie, and I reside at 2124 West Antoinette Street. Tonight, I am here to discuss the missing persons case of Alexis Camry Scott. It has been over a year since her disappearance on September 23, 2017, from 125 West Richmond Avenue, while she was attending a house party that she was presumably lured to by the residents. There is a $2,500 Crime Stoppers reward, as well as a $2,500 private donor reward for any tips leading to the location of Alexis Camry Scott and the close of her case. I would like to again stress how crucial it is to solve Alexis' case, in particular by reviewing some of the largest scaled crimes that Peoria has been faced with within the last 30 years. Many of you may remember in the late 80s and throughout the 90s a number of female sex workers going missing within the Peoria area. Several bodies would be discovered, and soon after, a serial killer would be put behind bars for several of these women's murders. Then, in the early to mid-2000s, a number of female sex workers, as well as female drug addicts, went missing within the Peoria area again. Some of the deaths were attributed to yet another serial killer. However, some were not. Not to mention that there was a young man that went missing during this time as well, who has never been found. It is my personal opinion that during this time, being referenced in my prior statement, that we can begin to see the encroachment of other forms of criminal activity aside from the traditional tactics of serial killers that have already been documented and seen up to that point in time. This brings us to the present time from 2016 to current. During this time, a significant number of young people identifying primarily as African American and or biracial, being African American and Caucasian, have gone missing from Peoria. I believe this is representative of a trend. During all three time frames I have mentioned up to this point, the individuals being targeted are members of various marginalized communities throughout the Peoria area. This is due to the fact that criminals have spotted a common pattern within our city. We let our prejudgments dictate what level of justice a person is deserving of, and this is utterly wrong. However, there is a way to change this. I ask that all of you stand united behind the Alexis Camry Scott case to show our city that crime is wrong no matter who it is perpetrated against, no matter what profession you are, your gender, or your race. Alexis' case is a statement, and it is one worth getting behind because it shows how a tragedy can bring a community together and that we can create a better future by learning through the shortcomings of our past. With that being said, please support the case by pressuring the Peoria Police Department to have open and transparent communications with the FBI per their involvement, as was stated at the last City Council meeting, and help us find justice for Alexis. Thank you.
Next, we have Shelley Epstein.
I'm Shelley Epstein. I live in the beautiful 3rd District. For those of you who are paying attention, it's 3-3 in the 5th inning. I was talking with a friend this weekend, and the water issue came up. I suppose that shouldn't be a surprise. This fellow's a financial analyst, not very political, doesn't know much about the issue, but he said he supports conducting due diligence. And I asked him why. And he said because Illinois American is spending so much money that they must be hiding or protecting something. No business, he said, spends that much money unless they're afraid of losing a big payday. The water company has spent untold thousands of dollars on billboards, mailers, newspaper ads, bill inserts, lobbying the council. So what's their message? It's fear. Fear that Peorians are going to pour $300 million of taxpayer money down the drain. That's what their billboard said. That's totally false. No taxpayer money is going to be spent to make the purchase unless you consider water payments that we make now taxpayer money. No one does that. No one considers that tax money. Fear that the purchase price will be exorbitant. You've heard that. Illinois American adds the last appraisal price to their vastly inflated investments to come up with $300 million. First, we reject the last appraisal as unfair. That's the purpose for due diligence. Second, they don't consider depreciation of their asset at all. And third, if the appraisal comes in too high, as it was in '05, the city isn't obligated to proceed. It's just not. There's fear about the union workers that are going to lose their jobs. You've heard that. But you know, a municipal water company is still going to need workers to fix the pipes and repair the leaks. Those are our neighbors. They're not going to lose their jobs. They're secure. In every community we surveyed, union jobs were protected after a sale was made. But Illinois American scares its workers. That's the purpose. And then they manipulate these good people into being afraid for their jobs. It's really shameful. Their fear about water rates are increasing. They don't talk about that they've raised rates 70% over the last dozen or so years. They don't talk about public water rates being half of what Illinois American charges us. More fear. Fear that this city council can't be trusted to regulate rates. They prefer a nameless, faceless Commerce Commission in Springfield that gives them rate increase after rate increase. They stoke fear of local control, your control, fear of this council, you ladies and gentlemen. Fear that it'll cost more than $400,000 to conduct due diligence. The last time, most of the money was spent on legal fees defending lawsuits brought by the water company. That's what the money was spent for. So all they have to do is pledge to cooperate with the city and not sue, as the CEO Council has pledged to do. And $400,000 would be plenty. So next time you talk to the representatives of the water company, ask them if they'll pledge not to sue the city, as we have. Fear that $5 million in fees will be lost. In every pro forma that's been done, it's anticipated the public water system would make payments in lieu of taxes. Pilots. Illinois American knows that, but if you tell a big lie often enough, you hope that it sticks. And finally, fear of out-of-towners. That's my favorite. What hypocrisy for a corporation based hundreds of miles away who brings in an attorney from Tennessee, whose local leaders, some of whom don't live in our city. We're here as Peorians. We raised our families here. We invested our money here, and we care about the city. That's why this has come. We want the city to prosper, and this is an avenue. I'll tell you what they're fearful of, Illinois American. They're fearful of losing millions that they confiscate from Peoria. I understand the strategy. Fear is a powerful motivator. It causes people to stop thinking and to react. Sometimes it forces people not to act in their own interest because they're scared. My plea to this council is this: don't act out of fear. Use your reason. Don't be afraid of getting the facts, and vote.
Next up, we have Amir Al-Samni.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and the Councilwoman, Councilmen. It's great to be here tonight. So a few topics I can, I have limited time, obviously, but first, with the water company issue, I've been advocating for a water company buyouts, and I would like to remind you that the water company is making millions of dollars. And so instead of making these millions of dollars go outside of Peoria, let's invest them here in Peoria. I've done my due diligence, and I've done a lot of research, especially when I was running for the council the last time, 2 years ago. I can tell you that there are a lot of money that being made, and a lot of money that being spent by them in forms of donations to local organizations here in Peoria in order to sway them from pressuring the council to make the right decision. This is my take on the topic. Number two, as I was just in France, I was in Paris about 12 days ago. Again, talking about the topic of business. France is the number one country in Europe for business startups. France boasts to have the largest business incubator in the world, Al Frisinet, which actually has about 1,000 startups. And Paris alone is a home of about 4,000 startups. France has given about 800 million euros combined since 2004 to about 4,500 young business enterprises. I've been following the council meetings and I've been going through the agendas and everything, and seriously, I'm really baffled by the fact that we have yet to address how can we attract new businesses to town, especially after the sad decision of CAT withdrawing their HQ about 2 years ago. So now, when is it time to really address this topic? Are we going to talk every time we meet here about current issues and look under our feet and just deal with whatever we are dealing with today, from challenges or from whatever people are advocating or pressuring us to do? Or are we going to think long term? Are we going to think how to attract more business to come to town before we lose even the rest who are here? Because I can tell you right now, there are many people who are moving out of Peoria. We are seeing significant decrease in real estate pricing due to the fact that CAT is taking their business out of Peoria slowly. So seriously, it's time for us to address this, and I hope we can address it very soon. Last, as I have less than 2 minutes, again, as we are starting a new school year, and it's already cold, obviously. Last year and the year before, I've been advocating with the school board to have these young children, these babies, 6 to 9 years old, to have their busing taken care of. As you all know, that after Illinois, the state of Illinois budget cuts, a lot of the children were deprived from transportation. If you are living within 1.5 miles from the school, then you are not allowed to get a bus to pick you up as it used to in the past. So by the grace of God, last year I was able to sponsor 10 children, and by a lot of you have donated also to support that cause. This year I'm trying to sponsor 20 children. I mean, we're talking about these children. Last year were between the ages of 6 and 9 or maybe 10 years old. So this year I'm trying to sponsor 20 children to be picked up by the bus through private donations. So please support this initiative. We need, I know you can tell me, well, this is not my problem as a city council. No, actually, this is our problem. This is a Peoria problem. Whether you are school board or city council, this is still our problem. So at least we can offer safe routes to these children, because last year, many of them were going to school walking and they did not have proper sidewalks, did not have any safe routes. So maybe at least as a city council can provide safe routes for these children. And again, if you would like to donate or sponsor one of these children to go to school, especially we're facing a brutal cold weather that's coming up very, very soon, please talk to me, or you can go to my foundation Facebook, AMR Foundation, inshallah, and donate there. Thank you so much.
Next we have Gary Newhouse.
My name is Gary Newhouse. My address is 3705 North Grandview Drive, Peoria, Illinois 61614. I don't have a script, so anything I say, it doesn't make sense. At least I didn't write it down. Everybody has done a great job with facts and figures, and I don't have facts and figures here. I just wanted to kind of express an opinion, and I am opposed to the water company buyout. I'm also very irritated by this CEO council, the special interest group, funded at least partially by some out-of-town or whatever, offering money to try to influence the city council. It rubs me the wrong way. I know they're lawyered up and probably everything is just fine, but it bugs me. I don't like it. And I really don't like the idea that they use a political group to assert that Mayor Ardis and Councilwoman Moore have a conflict of interest because Illinois American tries to be a good corporate citizen and donate to a program that allows some Peoria High School graduates that might not otherwise be able to afford it to go to college and to support a FM, low power, community radio station. Just seems ludicrous to me, or if it's not disgusting, to see the type of tactics that they will use to push their agenda. Now, I'm opposed to the buyout because where I live, I'm on a corner, Reservoir's on one side, Harmon's on the other. When my wife and I moved there in 2006, since then, I probably have called in never less than 2, and sometimes maybe 4, 5, 6 water main breaks every year. The water mains in this area, some people say they may be 100 years old. I don't know. The area was platted in 1906, so it certainly could be. And there are probably other water lines even older in this area. I think that it would be a big mistake for the city council to pay to take on the responsibility of maintaining this aged and rickety infrastructure. Every time I call in these water main breaks, the water company responds just like that. They come out, they do a great job, they're professional, everything's all done just fine. I'm satisfied with it. I don't even lose water most of the time. The other thing, and I know there's at least one city council member that would agree, that the city council faces so many important, pressing, time-constrained issues right now. If there is any issue that could be booted to the back burner, this is it, and I urge you to do so. Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
We do not have an executive session, so we would be at adjournment.
We have a motion to adjourn by Councilman Graves, seconded by Councilman Sear. If there's no further discussion, please cast your ballots. Councilmember Jensen?
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously. We'd like to thank H. Wayne Wilson and his listening audience at WCBU as well as Cable Channel 22. This meeting is adjourned.